OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, you're very welcome along to Thursday morning's OTB AM. It's Gilroy and Eoin Sheahan with you all the way through until 10 this morning. Loads of GAA on the programme today. Michael Meehan is going to do us a Galway contenders slot. We'll hear a snippet of the brand new podcast which launched across all of our platforms yesterday. It's Andy Moran and Paddy Andrews in the esteemed company of Tommy Rooney. We'll get Tommy on a little bit later on to tell us a little bit about what the lads are talking about, specifically about how they think Kerry are actually pretty close and how they're going to have learned from last year and what changes they need to make to catapult themselves right up to the ranks of alongside the Dubs. So as I said, plenty of GAA on the show. If you have anything you want to talk to us about this morning, as ever, the number is the same, 087 9 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. You can text that number as well if you want. Old school. But WhatsApp's kind of a little bit easier for us to just cut and paste it into the old documents that we're on. A reminder, OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Going to hear from Davy Fitzgerald as well, talking about why he was laughing at the fact that everybody had said this was his last dance at Wexford when it's actually not. There's been no formal announcement, and it certainly isn't his intention that this is the end of the Fitzgerald era, unless of course that's the right thing to happen. So we'll bring you that a little bit later on as well, and plenty more, including your TV picks for the weekend. But obviously we're going to talk a bit of football here. Graham Hunter's going to join us in about 10 minutes time. In the meantime, there's a few things that we need to talk about, and that's the fact that Mikel Arteta is an absolute genius. He's just undone Thomas Tuchel last night, and you, Eoin, as an Arsenal fan, must be incredibly excited about what's happening. If people went to bed and are unfamiliar with the fact that there's a match every night now, and you're like, oh yeah, there was a game last night. There was a game last night. Arsenal beat Chelsea by 1-0.
It's like you've got two different techniques here at the top of the show every morning, Joe. You've either got the stick where you try and make me angry about saying something that is untrue and is something that goes against everything that I believe in, and then other mornings, like this morning, you give me a carrot, and you dangle it in front of my nose and say something positive, and then you expect me to lunge forward and start gobbling up the carrot so that I look stupid by saying Mikel Arteta is going to be the best manager of all time. That's what you're trying to do here this morning.
You make me sound like I'm kind of some kind of zookeeper treating you as one of my animals.
Well, I am in like this kind of brick wall corner here, which does look like a little bit of a cage, to be quite honest with you. I'm just stuck here with my own emotions on the back of a good win for Arsenal last night. What can I say? It is Groundhog Day all over again, because let's not forget, at the end of last season, Arsenal managed to win a few games by accident. They beat Liverpool at the end of last year's Premier League after they'd won the title. They beat Manchester City, obviously, en route to winning the FA Cup final. And the FA Cup final, I think they maybe deserved to win. It was against Frank Lampard's Chelsea. But certainly beating City and Liverpool late on last season kind of happened by accident. Last night felt similar. Chelsea have got bigger fish to fry in a few weeks' time, kind of like Liverpool had already won the Premier League title this time last year. And they had a weakened team out. So there is no point dangling that carrot and saying, come here to me and let's talk about Arsenal being an actual Champions League qualification contender next season, because they're still not there.
It wasn't that we can decide. There were some key absences from Chelsea's lineup. Kepa was in goals for a start, right? Now, any time a goalkeeper like Kepa is in the team and he's had the difficulties he's had, there's going to be a knock-on impact on the confidence of the team. But is that his fault, or is that the fault of the players around him? I don't know.
It's a good question. Like, I mean, when I was kind of like thinking about this morning, my initial reaction to what happened last night was, oh, Kepa made a blunder, which was actually just not true whatsoever. Kepa did not make a blunder. Jorginho made a blunder in the goal for Arsenal last night, and I wonder, does that actually happen because he's looking back and he doesn't trust his goalkeeper as much, or there's like a nervousness around the team? I think what's probably more true than that is the fact that maybe Jorginho has that in him at times when he's got the ball at his feet and he's looking backwards.
Yeah, and look, Thiago Silva played, Cesar Azpilicueta played, Jorginho played, Pulisic played, Ben Chilwell played, Reece James and Kai Havertz, and you wouldn't be surprised if any of those started any of the big games coming up, or if the majority of those started the big games coming up. There were some players who have been rotated in from what we now know is Thomas Tuchel's first choice. I still think that it's a bit of an oversight from Chelsea not to go gangbusters for that game, because that would have given them everything they need in terms of the cushion. Essentially, winning last night would have qualified them for the Champions League in the top four. At the weekend, they have the FA Cup final, and then there's one more match in the league a couple of days later against the same side, and that's all of a sudden, like, say you lose the FA Cup final and you lose against Leicester in the league, you're in this terrible run of form. It's just last night was not a gimme, and so therefore I think, I presume Tuchel was planning to win that game with that side against, you know, a meh Arsenal team. Does it give you any hope for Arsenal, first off?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, I definitely think you're right that Tuchel picked a team last night that would keep. Like, I don't understand the goalkeeper thing a whole pile. Maybe Rudiger as well, not in the side. Like, it was a 70-80% team that should have been able to beat Arsenal, and I definitely think that it's next Tuesday that is a much bigger game for Chelsea than this Saturday. They play Leicester City in back-to-back games. And next Tuesday is a big game because they didn't win last night. And the top four races all of a sudden, thanks to Arsenal, actually, after opening up a good bit, like Liverpool, it is now essentially in their hands for them to qualify in the top four. If they win tonight, we're going to be left with a cracking final couple of match days in the Premier League season. They're so close in goal difference at the moment, Leicester City, Chelsea and Liverpool, that there is a situation in which maybe even goals scored becomes a factor in how it's decided. So it's going to be remarkable, but Chelsea probably shouldn't be in this position. They probably should have got something out of last night. And again, as I say, it was a slightly weakened team, but it should have been good enough to beat Arsenal, whose tails are very much down after what happened against Villarreal the previous Thursday. And I don't know, like, do they just see the Arsenal jerseys coming at them and say, we've got this? Like, that doesn't really make sense either, given Arsenal had beaten them early in the season. This is the first time Arsenal have done a double over Chelsea since the Invincible season. Like, this was a really good opportunity for Chelsea. This was a big game, and this was their chance to book their ticket to next year's Champions League immediately and then go and win the FA Cup this weekend. So, I don't know, things have just taken a slight turn now. Everything will be totally fine, I think, if they win their next two games, which is Leicester and Leicester again. I don't think there will be too much pressure on Thomas Tuchel to pull out an unbelievable performance in the Champions League final and win that. I think Manchester City are definitely favourites for that.
So hang on. Are you saying that it's possible that Chelsea could lose and not qualify for the Champions League and lose the final and lose the FA Cup final, and it would not, the pressure then would be like, wow, what a collapse?
Well, like, there wouldn't be actual pressure on them. It's about what is a terrible into the season. My point is that if they win their next two games, that actually the pressure will be slightly off, because Leicester is their toughest remaining fixture in the Premier League. Their last fixture, like, it is away to Villa, which is the only thing. It's not exactly a gimme, but it's just these next few days. It's as a result of last night. It was always going to be a really important week for Chelsea, and then they ended up not getting the job done last night.
I think that they've got to win the Cup. I think at this stage, if you lose to Leicester in the Cup final, it's going to hang around like a bad smell. And I think in retrospect, losing to, let's face it, a very mediocre Arsenal side in the Cup final last year, that began that bit of doubt creeping in around Frank Lampard, and he never got it back.
I'd say Thomas Tuchel is a bit more headstrong than Frank Lampard, even though Frank Lampard was stubborn at times as well. I think Thomas Tuchel has got way more strength in his convictions. I can't see a defeat like last night completely derailing them.
And it hasn't so far. They've responded well to the bad performances that they've had up to this point. But I don't know. I do think that there is an opportunity for Chelsea that was blown last night by not picking the strongest team, by not picking your first choice goalkeeper, that they might come to regret. You know, you just want to, everything is very tenuous at this point, that whole kind of run of form and the confidence and everything. And all of a sudden, actually, the FA Cup final, I would argue the FA Cup final matters a good bit more than the fixture on Tuesday, because it's the next fixture. And if they win that, then I think they can draw out the game against Leicester on the following Tuesday, and it'll be totally fine, you know. But if you've got that trophy, if you've franked yourself with the arrival, this is one of those rare occasions where a trophy seems to matter to a manager, and obviously to the owner as well.
Like, are we actually moving towards a place where the FA Cup is going to gain significance a little bit, because the top four thing has become even more of a battleground recently, whereas there was obviously, like, say during Wenger's later years in Arsenal, it was the top four trophy was kind of, it started to get the piss taken out of it, basically. And I wonder that down through the last few years, if actually the FA Cup is starting to regain its status, because maybe Manchester City will sew up the Premier League, maybe there's just too much quality in the Champions League, and for a team like Chelsea or Leicester City in particular, it's like this is a massive opportunity to have something really notable beside your name. Now, the counterpoint to that is Thomas Tuchel came up against a manager last night who had won the FA Cup last year, there's no sign of that ever being an element to protect Mikel Arteta. I think that it's a very short-lived thing when it comes to the legacy of a manager.
Well, it's a good question, right? So say Frank Lampard had actually won the Cup last year, would he have been given an extra few weeks to turn things around?
See, there you go. I don't think so. I think that while I've tried to make the case that maybe the FA Cup is gaining significance a little bit, in reality it's not going to save your job as a manager, because what is going to bring in more revenue? Is it going to be a Champions League place? Is it going to be a trophy that feels good for a couple of weeks? It's going to be the former.
Do you know, actually, maybe it will be really interesting to see how Chelsea respond if they lose against Leicester at the weekend. And I mean, you would still make them heavy favourites to qualify for the Champions League with the table the way it is. But it'd be very interesting to see a little back-to-back blip from them. And I mean, I think Leicester winning the FA Cup, most people will be pretty happy with that. And then we get to see what happens with Chelsea. That would be a good end of season. That would be good football narrative that we could all follow.
Well, Brendan Rodgers winning these next two games, that would be a remarkable little bit of storyline to actually have at the end of the season. This sort of talk of Brendan Rodgers perhaps being lured away to a bigger club, in inverted commas, would probably dissipate pretty quickly if Brendan Rodgers has Champions League qualification and the FA Cup in his locker as a result of the season.
Yeah, so it's a big week, and it's been kicked off nicely by Chelsea not picking their strongest team against Arsenal last night, and as a result we're in the scenario now where all of a sudden a little bit of a blip from them, and it's going to be very interesting end of the season. Are Liverpool feeling comfortable, confident in any way about what's going on? I mean, I don't think you can trust Liverpool to win 4 games in a row, can you?
No, and I think that tonight, obviously, they're looking at the team that Manchester United fielded against Leicester the other night and thinking to themselves, God, this is going to be a strong old team that we're going to be coming up against. So Liverpool, obviously, after Man United, they've got to go to Burnley, they've got to go to West Brom, and then they've got Crystal Palace at home. You think on paper that West Brom being relegated, Crystal Palace being safe, and Burnley being safe, obviously, is a gimme from Liverpool's perspective. The existence of incentive in those games is solely at the door of Liverpool, and you'd think that 9 points come from those games, because Liverpool have probably shown an uptick recently. Like we were making the point the other day that the weekend was the first time that Salah and Mane had actually assisted a goal for the other all season, which is remarkable. And Mane had come out obviously over the last couple of days saying he just couldn't understand what had been going wrong with him all season. Like, he got tests done by a doctor to see was there something that he couldn't detect himself. Like, that's the level that Liverpool were at all season, and maybe there's been signs of life from them over the last little while. So I expect 9 points from those 3 games. It's just Manchester United tonight, which is it's not a banana skin. This is like a huge fixture for Solskjaer, who will smile his way through the pre-match and the post-match niceties, who will deep down absolutely love to say, no, you're not coming to the Champions League next year, Liverpool. So
Liverpool are on 57 points. They have 4 games left this season. If they win all 4, they'll end up on 69 points. Leicester City are on 66 points, but they've got to play Chelsea in their second to last game and then Spurs in their last game. And Chelsea are obviously on 64 points. So that would mean that Chelsea need 5 more points from their remaining 2 games to touch off Liverpool, assuming Liverpool win all those 4 games. So it's all of a sudden that last night, squeaky bum time a little bit for Chelsea.
Absolutely. It's great that we have it, because this has been just wrapped up so quickly when it came to Manchester City and their own title, and then obviously the relegation battle just kind of fizzling out completely as well. It's important that we have these teams all trying to drive their bicycle towards the finishing line of qualifying for the Champions League next season.
Do Leicester and Chelsea just agree to draw with each other and try and get their result in the final day of the season? Is that the type of Faustian pact you make? It's not good enough for Chelsea, would it be?
No, see, it wouldn't be good enough for Chelsea. They're 2 points behind Leicester, so Chelsea need to go and win that game, actually. So there you go. There's the Brendan Rodgers mentality potentially next Tuesday night. Does he go out and park the bus? Johnny Evans of Fofana, does he bring Robert Huth and Wes Morgan back on a one-day contract and just stack that defence and park the bus against Tuchel? Tuchel obviously has had his own ability to completely kill off fixtures when needed to this season, and I'm sure Brendan Rodgers could do something similar if needs be.
Yeah, it looks like that Champions League final is going to be in Porto. That's the latest news this morning. We'll get more on that from John Duggan for you a little bit later on. I want to tell you about what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock on the show. A reminder, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Graham Hunter standing by. We're going to get to him in just a moment. Davy Fitz at 8:15. John Duggan at 8:35 with an update on the sports news. After that, we will be bringing you Michael Meehan's preview. It's the Galway contender slot. The football pod with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran at 9:05. A clip from that. Sue's TV picks at 9:15. And Harry Arter talking about how Eddie Howe will be a success at Celtic. Right, we've got a very cool prize for you this morning. We're giving away 2 Mighty Ducks jerseys before the end of the show to mark the new series, which has been released exclusively on Disney+, The Mighty Ducks Game Changers. Set in present-day Minnesota, the Mighty Ducks have evolved from scrappy underdogs to an ultra-competitive powerhouse youth hockey team. After 12-year-old Eoin is unceremoniously cut from the Ducks, he and his mum set out to build their own team of misfits to challenge the cutthroat, win-at-all-cost culture of youth sports today. This sounds like it could be watched by every GAA coach in the country. Anyway, with the help of Gordon Bombay, they rediscover the joys of playing just for the love of the game. So, to mark one of the greatest underdog stories we've ever known, we want you to guess our mystery voice from another remarkable underdog story. Which manager is this?
I want to pay a pizza, but my players doesn't want pizza. Maybe they don't love a pizza. Because I said, when we make clean sheet, I pay to everybody a pizza.
And there's a picture of the Mighty Ducks jerseys that we're giving away this morning. You can WhatsApp your answer to us, 0879 180 180, or you can comment below on the YouTube stream, and you just need to tell us who that. Who is that? Did you know that straight away, Eoin?
Look, a little bit of a throwback there. Haven't heard his voice in a long time.
I want to pay a pizza, but my players doesn't want pizza. Maybe they don't love a pizza. Because I said, when we make clean sheet, I pay to everybody a pizza.
5 years this month, isn't it, since that title? Where has the time gone is the question I would have while listening to that.
Yeah, OK. The Kerry contenders slot was last week. We were pretty confident after that Kerry would be contenders. I don't know if you've had an opportunity yet to listen to Andy Moran and Paddy Andrews talking about how good Kerry actually are and how the pain from last year will drive them on, Eoin. But I'd say the Kerry blood is up. Listening to these two, they know exactly what it takes to put it up to the Dubs and to win as All-Ireland champions in Paddy's case.
The great success of the Dublin machine over the last few years has not been the fact that they've won all these All-Irelands. They've produced these generational talents and that they've played some sensational football like which we've never seen before. The greatest success of Dublin over the last few years is that they have managed to quietly and by stealth take the throne of Kerry people as the greatest yerers in the country. Yet nobody will say this. Everybody will still talk about Kerry as the greatest talkers about building up a team, an opponent's team, while not actually fully believing that in the history of mankind, when actually the Dubs are actually way better at this. If you listen to any of our Dublin contributors, they will always have a lovely thing to say about their opponents, when deep down, do they actually believe that what opponents are doing will have any significance on the destination of Sam Maguire in any given year? Probably not. But I'm sure everybody in Kerry will be delighted to hear that nice things are being said about Kerry, even though deep down nobody in Dublin thinks that Kerry are going to win the All-Ireland or come close to it.
Andy Moran was saying the same thing, though. That blows your little paranoid conspiracy theory right out of the water.
What was Andy? What was the point again here?
They're both saying that Kerry are going to feel the pain from last year, and they're right there, and that they just need to find a way to unleash the power of David Moran and make him play his game as opposed to having the opposition to dictate to him. Yeah,
I think that's definitely true. I'm a massive Moran fan. I know that he's got castigated for kicking the ball away against Cork last year, which I think is a little bit unfair, and he's got castigated as well for giving the ball away against Dublin in the drawn game in 2019. Again, a little bit unfair. If anybody talks about David Moran at the moment, they talk about those two moments. They forget about the fact that he came into 2020 off the back of an All-Star year. People talk about his legs slowing down. They forget that he came into 2020 off the back of an All-Star year. He was, other than Brian Fenton, decided as the best midfielder in the country in 2019. I think he gets written off way too quickly, but that's a different conversation to saying Kerry are going to be hurting and therefore they're going to beat Dublin.
We just dragged you into saying something positive about Kerry there. Our plan has worked.
Positivity does not mean they're going to win in All-Ireland, but it's good to hear positive things. Maybe in the 2030s there will be some sort of dilemma about who might win the All-Ireland.
It is 7:50 this morning. Time for us to turn our attention to football. I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us. Graham, good morning to you. How are you?
Top.
What a brilliant end to the La Liga season where, I don't know, I'd say 2 weeks ago I was assuming that Barcelona were just going to win out because that's what happens, and they were going to win the league, and that has not happened. And as a result, right now, today, it looks like Atleti are on the verge of winning. Is this what might end up being Diego Simeone's greatest achievement?
I wish I could resoundingly jump onto that bandwagon. It will be a giant achievement, given that should they win it, 2 games left, both winnable. It will be the 3rd title in nearly half a century. So it marks it down as something extremely special. There have been times when in the run-in they look like mid-table. They've looked as if they've frozen in the headlights. It's not simply the fact that, like most of Spain's leading teams, they've been battered by injuries and COVID absences, probably more COVID absences and difficulties in Atleti's squad than any other. The place where their training ground is, Majadahonda, just about 20 minutes outside Madrid, has been a real hotspot for the virus. More than that, though, I really want to point out that they turned the year having made a record half season, looking really resourceful and powerful, and having established a gap that made them, in my own words, champions elect. Boy, I've been chewing my nails on that one. But when it came to the Madrid derby, where they played really well in a patch of several games where they looked horrible, look, anybody, I can shortcut this. Anybody who watched either of the games against Chelsea will have a bit of an idea how they were playing domestically. They just looked like shells, automatons. And they raised a game against Madrid, played really fabulous football, confident, pressing, sliding the ball through transitions. Trippier just back from his ban was outstanding. And then they lost a goal, when they were about to score 2-0. They didn't. It went straight up the other end. Benzema scored, and all the wind was knocked out of their esophagus. They looked lost. So for you to say now that they've got this points lead, last night they played really, really well in a fabulously entertaining game against Real Sociedad. That it's now back in their hands completely, with Madrid going to Granada tonight to try and cut the gap, is a big achievement. I just wish that there had been a steady hand all throughout. Diego Simeone, has looked like somebody who's a fearful champion. And I don't know how often we use that adjective about champions. I think rarely. I don't remember saying it or writing it in my career, in that often when they go up in a game, he'll retrench, even though when he's got Suarez at his age and athleticism, you can't ask him to burst beyond. You can't ask him to be playing on the shoulder of the last defender with 40 meters to run. You can't, and yet they will entrench themselves in their own penalty box and consistently be picked off. It's looked a tactical mess sometimes with the 3-5-2 that was really useful for Suarez in the first half of the season. When he was absent, they continued playing it. It made no sense. I really wish I could laud Cholo Simeone and say this has been a title with panache, a season that you want to admire. If you're an Atleti fan, fair enough, I hope you're throwing rotten eggs at the screen right now, because a title's a title, a win's a win. I think it's our job independently to look from the outside and say, wow, this might be a flawed. It might be beautiful to win, but it might have warts on it.
This is interesting, right? The psychology of a club who is trying to win a title against the powerhouses. I can see why you tie up. I can see why you get to the end and you start to have those concerns, because you don't have a squad festooned with players. I mean, obviously Suarez and there's a couple of others who are used to winning titles. Is there a possibility that this releases them, if they win this title, into something different, or is the character emerging of Simeone, who is ultimately, if you scratch away at it, quite conservative?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it, Ger. I think that, look, I've written about this and I meant it, and therefore that's how I'm going to answer your question. There's been a Wengerization of Simeone. He arrived separated from his young kids, from his wife. He arrived ultra hungry. The embodiment, Simeone, the coach at that stage, was the embodiment of Simeone, the player. And I think anybody who's lucky enough to have watched him knows exactly what that means. He came into a situation where they were mid-table and dropping, and instantly won them the Europa League. And what we saw thereafter was a guy who split the tasks with Mono Burgos, his ex-goalkeeper colleague from Atleti, when they won the double as players. And Mono Burgos was very much the tactical man, very much the guy who decided before games and during games how to strategize. And Cholo Simeone was the leader. He was the man manager, very much a manager in the old style that we used to know growing up, say, watching classic football in England. And that combination worked very well. But I don't simply mean that because Mono Burgos has moved on now to coach the club that Leo Messi supported when he was a kid and he was all boys, that things have changed. Mono Burgos wanted to leave because he saw his partner changing. And that hungry, young, aggressive, totally focused guy on winning has become a guy now, happily for him, with a new younger wife, a new kid, a couple of seasons now, maybe 3 seasons under his belt of being the highest paid manager in the world, getting over 20 million euros, gross before tax, over 20 million euros a year, being chauffeur driven around sometimes in a Rolls Royce. The change to me in his personal circumstances can be reflected in the way that being competitive is good enough now, I think, for him compared to winning. I think that the way in which he's earned the club several hundred million by being competitive in the Champions League, but without winning it, without needing to pay out big bonuses. The club desperately needs the money. They want him to stay, therefore they've rewarded him, I mean, richly. If you look at every coach in the world, I don't think that your audience and Off the Ball AM would say, yeah, top 2, top 3, Diego Simeone. They wouldn't. He's top paid. But I think the edge is gone. I think there's a bluntness. I think that the club is really, really happy to be there or thereabouts because they desperately need the money. And while they keep spending on record signings to facilitate Simeone's squad, record signings would include Thomas Lamar from Monaco, João Felix. Again, each of them has been pretty mixed in their results, and neither of them, although Lamar has been recuperated, neither of them has punched anywhere near the combined weight of 200 million that it cost to buy 2 players for Atleti. It's extraordinary. So I think your latter take on it, Jar, about the fact that we are witnessing what Simeone has become in his team, extremely conservative and more pragmatic, more percentage than he used to be. And as such, I think it troubles me because whether they win this title or not, I think that their struggles going forward will be a division between what players want to do, what players they want to go into 5th gear. I'm certain that they don't want anarchy, they don't want to toss Simeone out, but there's a breach. And if you have a breach between a group of players and a coach, it isn't always fatal, but if it's left that way, it can become so. So I'm sorry to sound a little bit pessimistic because this title race has been absolutely extraordinary. What we're talking about was fueled by Barcelona playing really well in patches against Levante, and then in the last 4 or 5 minutes, seeding a 3-3 draw. And you know, we've watched Barcelona toss things away, particularly recently against losing at home to Granada, drawing with Atleti. And that has allowed Atleti back in. Real Madrid are absolutely exhausted. They fought to a standstill with Sevilla at the weekend, 2-2 again. So we're seeing plenty of late drama, lots and lots of goals, hero players hauling themselves through exhaustion. And that makes for pretty good, if not elite entertainment, pretty good entertainment.
So with Simeone, you're saying he's not one of the handful of best coaches in the world. Is he the best coach in Spain?
Again, you want to make that pound for pound argument. I don't know if you want to use some of the arguments you're using with Moran there, but if you set aside little bumps, for example, Lopetegui hasn't won the title this season. or he's about to give them a record points haul. He's going to keep them in contention for the title. He has kept them in contention for the title until today. They haven't won the title since 1946. They haven't been in contention in the last weeks for the title since Juan de Ramos was in charge. Julian Lopetegui has proven himself to be, particularly with a very good squad and a brilliant football director above him, he's in a cosy spine of a club that has made him look fantastic. Tonight's opponents for Real Madrid, Granada, if you look at them, in historic last season, first season wonders is not something that's completely unknown. But to get to Europe for Granada's first ever time in their history last season by thrashing Athletic Bilbao 4-0 on the last day, to compete really well in Europe and go far, and I think make Manchester United work reasonably hard, and then to be deeply, soundly safe early on in La Liga with the injuries they've had. Diego Martinez at Granada, you could begin to argue, well, no, it's Unai Emery comes into Villarreal first season. Here he is in their first UEFA final after this is their fifth attempt. There are candidates, and I've noticeably left out Zidane and Marcelino. If you really nailed me to it, and Koeman isn't a competitor for him, if you really put me on the spot, I would say that Marcelino is the outright best coach in Spain. And Diego Simeone, if you set aside his previous achievements and the allure of a man, because he carries a great image, he carries a great impact, he's extremely iconic, and I don't say that lightly. If you look at him now and say, is he the best coach in Spain? I would say no. And I would say he might have to get in a queue of 3 or 4.
Who bottled it more, Graham, between Barcelona and Real Madrid?
Well, Real Madrid are still in it. Whereas I think that, I had Real Sociedad drawn last night and they came damn close. Then Barcelona might still be just about in it. Koeman is the answer. Because Koeman has become much more worried about whether he's going to keep his job than he should have done. Throughout the last 7 or 8 weeks, he's become aware that having turned things around, having put together a points total, which I must admit seemed close to unfeasible given what he took over. Having won the cup, Koeman patently thought that the extra year that is on his contract would be his to complete. Laporta has conspicuously avoided confirming that. The opportunity was when things between Koeman and Messi were pretty good. By the way, asterisk, I know factually that Messi doesn't think Koeman is the man tactically, that he's got the right coaching credentials to take them forward over the next couple of years to win the Champions League. Messi doubts that. They have got on well. Messi undoubtedly respects what he's seen Koeman doing around the rest of the squad, the way in which the team is playing more robust, more interesting, more attractive football. And Messi's had a good season under Koeman. An astonishing season if you think about what mood he was in last August. But nonetheless, it's known within the club that Messi's unsure that Koeman is the man going forward. Koeman over the last 7-8 weeks has been thinking, this is all about how do I win the league so I keep my job, not like what does each situation require. And if you look at the way he's prepared for certain games, the tactics he's used in certain games, and his in-game management, then he's come up deficient. And it pains me to say it, because you'd like to be able to say that a man who can take the diminished resources, the fractious resources that he inherited at the beginning of the season and make them competitive domestically for this long, and until the last 3-4 games, probably, as Ger said at the top on, the one that everybody expected would fulfill the games by winning and win the title. To lose his grip on that and to make decisions in matches which literally baffle you. And the last one against Levante was a dog's breakfast. It feels to me as if he's got in a muddle about the big thing here is I'm at my dream club. I've wanted this job for nearly 20 years. And remember, he nearly got this job ahead of Frank Rijkaard in 2003, but Ajax wouldn't let him go, and Basel couldn't pay the buyout clause in Koeman's coaching contract. So I think it's a natural human instinct to go, no way am I losing this. I have to cling on. I think he's lost focus on what was in front of him, and therefore lost the means to win this title. And given that Zidane and Real Madrid are still more or less in it and have the head-to-head record over Atleti, so should they finish equal on points, Real Madrid win the title. I'm not calling Zidane out yet as having lost this league or chucked it away, but Koeman comes out of this not smelling of roses on.
Graham, there's loads of other little bits and pieces that we just wanted to kind of try and tie all the disparate strands together. It's been, I mean, the papers had it 3 weeks ago that the Premier League deal was going to be a replica for the next 3 years of the existing deal, which means that Sky, BT and Amazon have it. It's now been confirmed this morning by the Premier League that that is in fact the case. So they're not losing any of the $4.5 billion for the domestic rights, and obviously they make the same amount in their international rights, which means they'll continue to be a powerhouse over the next while. And probably from the English club's perspectives, it will be at least that deal and maybe the next deal after that before the Super League clubs revisit the plans for the Super League. In the meantime, UEFA feel emboldened a little bit because of the response that they've had, and so they feel like now's the retribution tour, and the retribution is focused on the big clubs in Spain and Juventus as well. So with all that going on, does a title win for Atleti suddenly mean that we might have a situation where Atleti become the main club in Spain for the next couple of years if they're not getting punished by UEFA, if UEFA do follow through with punishment for Barcelona and Real Madrid? I mean, I suppose the real question is, does anybody actually think Barcelona and Real Madrid might not be playing Champions League football as some form of punishment for persisting with the Super League dream?
Wow, it's a coop and buster of a question. Let me go multiple choice. One, what Sheahan is doing is merited. He has allowed the recalcitrant clubs to come back in without punishment. You can argue all you want about that, but I think he was in a position whereby he had to say to them, there's a way back, because there was fear at UEFA. I know that there was fear and confusion about what had happened, as well as a sense of betrayal. The instant he found out that there were deserters and that the large majority of the breakaway clubs in the European Half-Wit League wanted back into the fold again because they were scared outside in the cold. It's been a glorious episode, hasn't it? I think he had to welcome them back in. Those, the stick-outs, well, if you don't punish them, those who've come back in will be going, well, and those who never weren't invited or who wouldn't breach, they're looking and going, well, it's okay just to do it. So, listen, it stands to evidence that Sheahan is doing the right thing. It's an investigation, so let's see what they come up with. I think they're checking out their legal rights. If the three clubs that you mentioned, who are Barcelona, Real Madrid and Juventus, refuse to renege on the Super League and don't get themselves back in line, they will merit being expelled, suspended, in my view. At which point, I understand your argument about Atleti, but you have to pose the idea that if you cut out all the fighting and the tumult and the legal actions and you cut to a chase whereby, in your hypotheses, there's no Real Madrid or Barcelona in the Champions League and they lose that enormous revenue. You're talking about, for both of them, you're averaging now about in the region of 90 million a season. That's a lot to lose in the current pandemic. It's a horrendous prospect for them. Do they suddenly become non-competitive domestically, Jerry? They become non-competitive in the transfer market. The knock-on effect in whatever European football they're playing over the following 3, 4, 5 years, that becomes absolutely gigantic. But does it mean that they aren't they're 8-stone weaklings for Atleti to push around domestically? I don't think so. What might be interesting would be, like, if this scenario were to come to, let's call it the Gerrard scenario, and I'm going to phone Sheahan and ask him to use that phrase now. If the Gerrard scenario comes to pass, then what we would obviously regularly be seeing would be Real Sociedad, Sevilla, pick your club, maybe Athletic, maybe Betis, playing Champions League football. And should they do reasonably well, last 16 quarters, you're talking about 75, 80 million. Suddenly their robustness in terms of retaining good players, number one, not buying, but retaining good players, and then investing in the market becomes different. And maybe LaLiga becomes a 6-horse race all of a sudden. It's an interesting prospect. For the good of Barcelona and Real Madrid, I hope that they wake up, smell of coffee, and work out that the coffee's about to burn their nose. They acted wrongly. They've been made to look incompetent. It's been a clown circus. They've lied. They've breached competences too. And one of the worst things for me is that they took no account. Never mind, fans are sadly used to not, and Laporta has promised the voice of the fans at Barcelona will dictate everything, but there's been no move whatsoever to try and ask the fans to vote on what they think. There's been, nothing's happened on that. So that's just a nice rosewater smell and hanky to cover a turd. The thing that angers me is that the players may be beautifully recompensed, but we are taking players and squeezing the living daylights out of them. That's why I use some of the terminology I did about the way in which this league is coming to a culmination in Spain. We're seeing elite footballers who can't put one foot in front of the other without injuring themselves, who mentally, creatively are exhausted. We're in a period of, never mind the quality, feel the width. And I like quality. And also, I hate your job, my job, Owen's job. We get to meet these people. We get to know them. They're real human beings. They're not just commodities to be tossed around, yet they are being repeatedly treated like commodities. Nobody asked them about the Super League. Nobody, they all just went, listen, I'll buy them off for an extra 10 million in wages a year each. Well, fine, but I hope that bounces back on all of them and slaps them right in their stupid faces.
Graham, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million. Cheers. Graham Hunter giving us his thoughts there. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It is 12 minutes past 8 this morning. Packed show still to come. And we're going to be bringing you our interview with Wexford boss Davy Fitzgerald in just a minute. First, this has been a week that the lads in Golf Weekly have been waiting for a very long time. Rory McIlroy has finally won a tournament again. It's been widely reported that Rory has been working with Pete Cowan lately on his swing, but Nathan Murphy feels his win at Quail Hollow owed more to someone who's been by his side a little bit longer than the swing guru Cowan.
And one of the issues of how we analyse Rory is we always look for the best and compare him to that in every aspect. So when you compare his relationship with Diamond, you're looking at Spieth, Geller, and why don't they talk like that? Whereas actually, aside from Spieth, Geller, can you name too many combinations that we can remember any conversations that they've had over the last few years? Yeah. But this did feel, even from an outside point of view, as though it was a bit of a coming of age for Harry Diamond, because everybody just felt he was there because he's Rory's mate, which is hugely insulting in one way because he's unbelievably talented golfer, won the West of Ireland, represented Ireland, all of that sort of stuff. And he is there primarily because Rory wants somebody close to him. But I don't think Rory would have come to the conclusion he should have taken the drop himself unless Harry Diamond had said it. They had been there for 3 or 4 minutes. They had taken the stroll up the left-hand side where you're thinking, well, this will be a little bit crazy. Are you going to hit it into the stand and then you get your free drop somewhere nicely up there? At no stage had Rory, from the conversation we heard, suggested, well, I can always take a drop. It wasn't until Harry Diamond almost sort of whispered, you could take a drop. And almost instantly, it just seemed to click with Rory. And that is the winning and losing of the tournament, because listen, initially it looked as though he got lucky but not going in the water. But the lie was obviously horrible. There's probably a bit of ego involved with Rory of, I can pull off any shot here. Well, how good is this going to look on the 18th when everyone thinks I'm in dire trouble if I just hit this beautiful shot back onto the fairway? Even though I know he said he felt he might go straight through the fairway. But I thought it was the perfect intervention at the right time from Harry Diamond. And one, I don't think inside the McIlroy camp he probably needed, but from everybody in the outside, it just probably shuts up a little bit of that noise for the rest of the year about what Harry Diamond's value is.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read, all in one place. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app. Available to download now from your app store.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
16 minutes past 8 here this morning on OTB AM. Before the outbreak there, you heard the lads from Golf Weekly rejoicing over Rory McIlroy's win at Quail Hollow and singing Harry Diamond's praises. Harry Diamond now one of the highest paid Irish sports people out there. Automatically, by virtue of his success as Rory McIlroy's caddy. When you think about that, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's wasn't that always the piece of trivia about the highest paid New Zealander in the world? But it was always Williams, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a great pub quiz question. But we've got a new pub quiz icon there in Harry Diamond, and for telling Rory McIlroy to take a drop, he's all of a sudden a genius.
Quid's in. You can catch that podcast and all of the other exclusive Golf Weekly material over on their Patreon. Sign up at otbsports.com/Golf Weekly. It's just $3.99 a month plus VAT. Now, it is 16 minutes past 8 here this morning. Reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. So yesterday afternoon, the Wexford boss, Davy Fitzgerald, joined us for a chat. Enjoy.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Marie Keating Foundation is teaming up with the Wexford hurling manager Davy Fitzgerald to launch Give Bladder Cancer the Red Card. It's a nationwide bladder cancer awareness campaign. Each year, 490 people in Ireland are diagnosed with bladder cancer, and 3 times more men than women are diagnosed with the disease. Davy's fronting the campaign to highlight the biggest warning sign of bladder cancer, which is blood in your urine, and to encourage people to visit their doctor immediately if they have any concerns. Davy Fitzgerald, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I'm interested, getting involved in campaigns like this, do you feel it's important to give back, to use your profile to help raise awareness around issues like bladder cancer?
Listen, I suppose I've had a few health issues myself, and I'm very aware of how important health is in your life. So without a shadow of a doubt, I'm delighted to be involved in something like this, because the most important thing in life is health. And that we kind of mind our health, and that we listen to the warning signs you get, having previously had a few myself. So I'm actually thrilled to be involved.
You're very open about your own health issues, and again, that decision to speak publicly about it it's not something that everybody does. It's something that we as Irish people can sometimes be a bit reticent to tell our own stories for loads of different reasons. It's just part of our psyche. But for you, was it a worthwhile experience telling people about the health issues that you have had?
Listen, if you can help 1 or 2 people to read the signs and go and seek help, it definitely is worthwhile. And probably only for me listening to my body on the 2 or 3 different occasions, I might be here right now. So if I can help someone get a message that will say, okay, I have a pain here, there is a reason for this, I need to go and get it checked out and be more aware. And even that's one of the things behind this, behind bladder cancer. We want people, just if they do get 2 or 3 signs, to just go to their GP and tell them what they're coming across. So I'd be very much on that way of thinking. And you know what, like, sport is great, but your health and the time you have in your life is very important.
It might be a bit rude to bring this up, but I think you've got a nice big roundy birthday this year. How is your health at this stage?
You're an awful man, so you are. I was trying to keep that quiet if I could, you know. Listen, the health isn't bad. I've definitely taken a lot more notice, and you know what? Like, lockdown has been very tough, but I have I spent a good bit more time on my health, without a shadow of a doubt. Tried to watch my weight a bit more, and also, like, I just probably watch a bit more when I'm eating. I'm not saying, no, I don't want to eat bad at times. I do. I can eat the wrong things every now and again, but less frequent than I used to be, I'll put it like that.
How do you do that, though? Because that's the compulsion that people have is the problem, really.
It is like, I probably calorie count a bit. And I am, do you know, the biggest thing for me is actually just feeling good. And you would not, by eating really healthy and really good and drinking the water like every day, like I would have struggled to drink my 2 litres of water a day or whatever. Now, the difference it makes to me is incredible. So I'll tell you why it's a bit easier is because you can't, I think sometimes we don't appreciate what feeling good, getting up in the morning and actually feeling good is about. And you know, that beats anything for me. I love my sport, but health is number one, and the people around you being healthy and feeling good. We got to appreciate that. That's number one.
Your sport is obviously a situation that tends to involve quite a lot of high pressure as well, Davy. I wonder, is there a sense of convenience and stress that comes with maybe bad lifestyle choices as well, not just for you but for everybody involved in high pressure scenarios in the GAA?
That's a good question. I suppose there's as much stress and pressure as you want to put on yourself in it, you know. I try my best to put things in perspective. I know you wouldn't think that in the sideline for maybe an hour or 70 minutes or whatever, but if you ask the lads around training, I'd like to think the environment we have is a good environment, an environment where we can express ourselves, because at the end of the day, this is a sport. Is it pressure at times? It is, and you want to win, but you have to bring some realism to it too and appreciate what life is about. So I try my best to keep that massive pressure off myself. It doesn't always work, but I try hard. I try and appreciate the most important things in life. But you are right in saying when I'm in the car so often, like the one thing that used to kill me was stop at the shop, get fuel, and then you might blow it up in a bit of junk and a sugar hit. And now, thankfully, in the last year or so, I've definitely got that a bit better under control. Not totally, but I'm getting there.
It's just impossible. I know that like the whole point about those shops they're designed with their shiny wrappers to go, oh, buy me, eat me, and the multi-packs are the killer. I just wonder, are you getting better at dealing with the stress and pressure now? Is this something was there a wake-up call along the way, or were you always kind of tightly wound for the match itself, but actually able to separate those things out?
Again, I'll put it to you like this, especially the environment I find myself in managing and being in the spotlight a lot. I try my best to stay away from reading things on social media. I try my best not to read papers. I try my best not to look at interviews. If you like, I try and keep my own little bubble, believe it or not. And I think that's important that you don't get caught into it, because if you get too wrapped up on stuff, it can overwhelm you and you'll find yourself fighting so many different battles. And you know what? At the end of the day, you don't need to fight them. I think if the people around you, if the people you're dealing with know the exact story, I think you're better off, because stuff could consume you easily enough. And do you know what? Life isn't worth that.
Again, is that something a skill you've acquired as opposed to one that like you always had the whole way through?
No, listen, I didn't have that the whole way through. That's for definite. I used to try and fight every battle, and do you know what the worst thing is? Your friends will come back and say to you, "Do you see what so and so wrote?" or "Do you see what so and so said?" And now I just tell them if they're about to say something, I don't want to hear it. Like, the way I look at it is, I will make mistakes. I'll do things that aren't spot on, but then there'll be other times where I know I'm right and someone has had a different view on it, and I've just got to accept that. I think that's the most important thing.
Is part of it about biting your tongue at certain times as well, Dave? You're not saying stuff?
100%. You could probably see that. I mean, a few years ago, I'd wear my heart to my sleeve big time. I still do to a degree, but there is issues I could probably go into and deal with, and that really hurt me or hurt my family. And I just, you know what? The people that know us know exactly what we're like. That's what I say to myself, and I just let it go. There's no point. I'm not going taking on people, fighting with them, because you're not going to change people's minds. Certain people out there have an idea, and no matter what we say or do, we're not going to change it. So what can we do? Just let them off.
That feels like it's a maturity that you've reached. And was there a single point that you can point to Is that lockdown connected in some ways?
You know, some of it might be a reflection, like, yeah, and can I say this, even dealing with good stuff, like, you know, where you're doing your TV programs and you're all over the place, like, I try and keep myself I find it very hard to look at stuff I do, and I try and keep myself away from that. And the same with the bad stuff. I just try and live my life as separate to that if I can. Like, that's my work and that's my stuff, and I be as honest and as good as I can at it, and then I try and stay away from it and live the normal life, be it walks, be it golf, be it doing stuff with my family. Like, you have a life outside of that, and I think it's very important that you're not living that life that's maybe portrayed at times. You have to go back to the simple things that matter in life.
Has it been a bit easier then to live that life because you're not leaving the house as much, you're not driving across the country as much, people aren't coming up to you in the street obviously as much? Now that might change over the next few months, but has lockdown actually helped in that regard?
Yeah, well, listen, the one thing, I never mind if people are genuine saying hello to them and talk to them. You go down to Wexford and you can't go through the streets and people are saying hello to you, and it's probably the same in Ennis. Like, there's some really good people who are just mad to say hello and have a chat, and I think it's nice to be nice, but then I get a lot of time at home, be it walk the dogs or out with Sharon, or like just spending time at the golf course with my friends, which I love, playing cards with my friends and my mum down at home. Like, they're special times to me. I love them times where you're around them people as well. So it's to get that balance, I suppose, guys, is the most important thing, is get that balance in your life, is where you get time to spend with your friends and with your people as well. And then in the business I'm in, you have to give the public time as well. I think that's important.
What's your relationship with hurling? Is it an addiction? How do you classify it?
It's a love, without a shadow of a doubt. I grew up as a young fella, being brought by my uncle, my dad at times, to games and watching Clare play, and had a dream to play for Clare and to play for my club, 6 Mile Bridge. And I just wanted it so badly. I wanted to be involved in the game so badly. And like, to tell you the truth now, I'm manager at Wexford. I coach our local senior team, but I'm also helping my son coach our local minor team. And the kick I have got out of going up to the under-17s at 6 Mile Bridge and working with them in the last number of weeks has been immense. Now, it's not leaving me many days to do anything else, because but I actually involved. I have 3 or 4 young lads, Cullum's friends, and a few more involved with me. And you know what? It's great. And the young lads are 17, and I find them great to relate to and trying different things. And it's just brilliant, you know. It's kind of way different to being involved with Wexford and even the 6 Mile Bridge senior team.
The reason I ask is because it's been characterised that this is your last dance with Wexford, this is your last season. I haven't seen you say that anywhere. I've seen everybody make this assumption that come what may, the end of the year is the end of Davy at Wexford. Is that 100% confirmed in your heads?
No, I 100%. I don't know. I don't know what will be. What we'll do is we'll judge it at the end of the year, right? People are making them assumptions. No one has talked to me. Like, I think the chairman rang me the other day, and we had a good laugh about it. And like, when the time is up, it's up. It might be next year, it might be the year. I don't know. When it's up, it's up. All I know is the 5 years I've had at Wexford so far have been incredible, and I've loved it. And maybe there'll be a 6, maybe there won't. But I'm telling you that 100%, guys. You have it from my mouth. I don't know. I'm not judging what's going to happen or what's not. I just don't know. If it's the right thing to stay on and do it, we'll do it. And if it isn't, we won't. If they need a change. So that's honestly it. No one has an idea, because I don't know myself.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I did kind of, I was like, I was Googling away going, he must have said this somewhere, because everybody's saying it, and it's just become the received wisdom that this is the end. But you know, there's loads of different pathways to a brilliant, incredible season for you guys, where you're like, oh, I mean, why am I walking away from this? You know, we're in the middle of something here as opposed to the end. Was lockdown a bit of a nightmare for you, the second lockdown after last season, when you were like, how do I piece together the evidence of last season's broken year when all of the evidence of the previous year was suggesting that we were heading in the right direction?
Well, I put it to you like this, right? I came in 2017, Wexford hadn't been out of Division 1B for a lot of years. We got out of 1B, we got to Leinster final in the first year. In 18, we maintained our 1A status, to me, which was so important that we didn't slip back down. And in 19, we won Leinster. So, like, my job at the start was to make sure Wexford were competitive. And in 2020, we actually had a great league. I think we only lost one game. Like, so what came at the end of 2020, like, yeah, we were beaten twice, we didn't perform, but like, I actually think our time in Wexford has been very good, you know. So you just have people maybe stuck for things to say and write, and I can't do it. I've said it to you, I can't do anything about that. But I'm realist, and I think we haven't done too bad. And what's going to happen in 2021, I don't know. Like, if we can stay in the top number of teams, then I think that's very good for Wexford. Then you have an opportunity. And if not, then like, you'll evaluate everything at the end of the year and you just see, okay, can I get more out of this team? Can I not? Do they need to change? Do they not? But that won't be anyone else's decision. Only probably the chairman of Wexford and myself, we'll talk about it and we'll be realistic. That's what we've always done, is we chat about it. And I know at the end of last year, I talked to the chairman and he said, well, we had a great league. He said, and the championship were after coming off club hurling and football, it was tough. So it's hard to evaluate that. But in general, the time in Wexford, guys, has been pretty good. I think anyone fair-minded and reasonable can see that.
Yeah, like I don't think there actually has been too much criticism about the time in Wexford so far. Like, as you say, there's a number of mitigating factors for last year, and 2019, like, without getting back into what happened 2 seasons ago, you were a puck of a ball away, or a couple of pucks of a ball away, from beating the All-Ireland champions.
Oh, we weren't far away. Listen, you can't say that Wexford are going to win Leinster. That's a successful year. A successful year for me is when Wexford are competing with the top. That's what we have to try and do. And thankfully, we did that in 2019. We competed with the top, and that's what I'd like us to see. If we're competing with the top, then we have an opportunity. Has anyone a God-given right? No. Probably Limerick are a bit ahead of the game at the moment. The rest, there's a number of teams that are thereabouts. I think it's tight enough in general, but you don't know what's going to happen, guys. Sport is funny. You just don't know what way it's going to roll.
How do you live with defeats, though? Eoin brings up 2019 and the puck of the ball. And last year, again, I think expectations were high because 2019 was so spectacular. Have you processed those? Have you parked those completely? Or is that just the competitive instinct is such that they actually never go away, and that's the whole point?
Listen, you have to have a bit of heart. That'll drive you. Of course, we want to win. Let me say this. It's great to say, yeah, we want to go out and compete. Of course you want to win. Does the feet hurt? Of course it hurts. There's no point talking anything else. It does hurt. But that drives you on to want to do it again, you know. But do you know what? With all the teams, there's very few teams that are going to end up winning at the end of the year. You might have someone that will win Munster, someone that will win Leinster, and one of them will probably win the All-Ireland.
You mentioned there a moment ago that Limerick are ahead of the pack a little bit, Davy. Like, that's clear to see. And I think what's kind of been a pretty sensational about it is that not a lot of people not involved in hurling a few years ago might have seen this dominance of Limerick coming. You might have seen it yourself. It's interesting, given you've obviously worked with a team that won the All-Ireland that had quite a young age profile, and then maybe getting back to that level was a struggle the few years after that. So why are Limerick in such a place that it is sustainable as opposed to maybe how Clare were fixed when you were there?
It's very interesting to answer that. Like, I think Clare were just coming back in 2016. We won the National League. I remember even talking to me, all Donoghue, we got beat the All-Ireland quarter-final. We actually weren't far away off coming back right then, you know. And then Clare went to Munster final in 17, 18. I think they were right there. Clare didn't actually disappear. They were right there, you know. So, like, you look at probably 16, 17, 18 for Clare. They weren't 100 miles away. It would have taken very little. I think in 18, they were one puck of the ball away from getting to an All-Ireland final. So, like, they weren't 100 miles away, but going from 13 to 15, like an age group, to win that young, it's hard to cope with it, you know, and you would have had a few factors, but definitely they were back in 16. With Limerick, and I have to say it, the people that guided them at underage, I don't know exactly who got them at 14, 15, 16 up to minor, but I have to say they did an incredible job not alone with their skill factor, but the way they're presented, and fair play to them. They deserve a lot of credit. And then the current management, of course, have kept their feet on the ground and they've worked them extremely hard. And the big thing from a management point of view is to make sure that you've humble guys that will just go out and work hard every day. And Limerick are that. Like, they are humble and they work hard every single day they go out.
They've married the physicality of that Kilkenny team with the stick work of any team that we've seen before. It's a heady combination.
It is, but I think you can see the way most teams are presented. You should look at our body composition. Like, it's pretty unreal, you know. So I think a lot of teams are up there physically. Like, I'd like to think the Kilkennys, the Wexfords. You look at the Corks will come to the table this year. Like, there's a lot of teams physically are right up there as well, you know. But as we say, Limerick have that small edge at the moment, and it's the rest of our jobs to make sure that we can get up there and get competing with them, and that's what we're all striving to do.
And is that keeping you awake at night?
No, it's actually driving me on. I can't wait for the challenges, you know. And you might meet Limerick and they might beat you, but you know what? We'll come back again and we will get them. Like, there will a time come where it's going to change. Like, there will another team come, so there will, and you'd just like to be involved in that team that comes and makes a breakthrough. It will happen. So it will be this year or next year. It will happen. So that's important, and you have to believe that as well.
In terms of the league season this year, I just want to ask you briefly about the rules before we get to the games themselves. We've seen one game. The referees are obviously learning on the job. It's very difficult for them. What's your take on, in particular, the advantage rule? Because that's the one that had the most criticism after the weekend.
That's right. I'd be fairly certain you know the answer to this one yourself. What we've just had in the first weekend, we all realise we need to do something quickly about the way that this has been interpreted. We don't need to be stopping the game. Let the advantage accrue if they get the score. What was it? The Limerick game, I think. I can't remember who shot the point now. And it should have been allowed. They brought it back for a free, and I think they missed the free. Like, that's not an advantage, you know. And we're stopping the game. Like, to me, if you have 20 to 30 frees in a game, fine, that's nearly acceptable. But if we head up between over 40 and over, we're absolutely going to destroy what we have. And I said that straight after the game on Sunday. I'm not 100% in favour of what they're doing with that rule.
Yeah, and I can't see anybody who's coming out saying it's brilliant. We've finally fixed this problem in the game that nobody thought was a problem. It's a strange scenario where we find ourselves trying to fix that. The game against Clare this weekend, Clare obviously coming back off the defeat against Antrim. Did you anticipate that defeat against Antrim? Did you expect to be facing a team who was bouncing in after a victory in Belfast?
Listen, like, let me say this. I think we played Antrim there a year or two ago, Wexford, and trust me, they put it up to us. Like, Antrim, especially above in Belfast, are going to give you a tough game. I know what Clare like. They beat Wexford last year. I know all them young lads, and the time and respect I have for them is incredible. So, listen, I know what will come in us this week. They always seem to lift their game, especially when they're playing myself from Wexford. But they'll be right back at it. Don't have any doubt. I know them young lads, and they'll be right back at it.
I know you don't want to get into the winter of discontent that there has been in Clare, and so I'm not going to ask you about that. But your own relationship with the county, what's that like at the moment?
No, there's a lot of great people in Clare. The amount of people that come up and talk to you and say hello to you is brilliant, you know. So, no, my county, you love it, absolutely love it. And I suppose you're not going to get on with everyone, that's the way it goes. But Clare is a great place, a lot of great people, and that won't ever change.
And is there a sadness in you about how things have turned out?
Yeah, just not interested in talking about it, guys.
No, that's fine, and I appreciate that. And sorry, I'm not trying to pry. It's more your own personal relationship with the people as opposed to the politics.
Yeah, and that's what I just said to you. Like there is so many great people in Clare. It's incredible, and that's all I'm focused on. And that you won't have people that will like you or not like you, and that's part of life, as we discussed earlier. So that's the way it goes. But that's how it is in Clare, and I'm happy out with the so many people out there that will come up to you and say hello to you, and I suppose appreciate how long you played for Clare and managed Clare and that, and it's great. But certainly no. We're just going to drive on now and look forward to Sunday and a good game.
And the proximity of the league to the championship this year, does that invest even greater intensity in the performances of the individuals that you're trying to judge whether or not they're going to be up to championship standard in 3-4 weeks' time?
Yeah, I think Sunday will be a big barometer because you'll have two teams probably going at it hard. I know we're missing a good lad last day. We'll still be missing a number the next day. I'm sure Clare will be missing a number, but isn't that an opportunity for other guys to get in and get a goal? Like, the league isn't the be-all and end-all of everything this year, like, because I don't even think you're going to have a league final. So you're saying to yourself, well, try things. Like, certainly I got to try things last weekend, and we'll try a few more this weekend. But I would think it's like the next we have Clare and we've Kilkenny coming up, and I think there'll be a massive 2 weekends, and just seeing how we cope with that challenge, because there'll be two physical games, there'll be two games that'll be very intense, so it'll be good for what's going to come maybe in 6 or 7 weeks' time.
Davy, thanks very much for your time this morning. The launch of the campaign is Give Bladder Cancer the Red Card. It's in association with the Marie Keating Foundation, and the advice is, if you have any blood in your urine or any other things that you think might be bothering you, to go and visit the GP, and that's the best advice we can give anybody.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff, Davy. Thanks a million. Cheers.
All right, lads. Take care. Bye-bye.
OTB AM.
41 minutes past 8 this morning. Davy Fitz confirming that this is not guaranteed to be his last year in Wexford, despite the reports that were very much that he's got the Chicago Bulls together for one last tour of the battlefield, and this was going to be his equivalent of Michael Jordan's last dance. Not the case. He has confirmed to us this morning that was a broadcast exclusive. And we're all too happy to help out the Marie Keating Foundation to promote anything that involves anybody going and getting yourself checked, because it makes a whole heap of sense. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It's 842. John Duggan, good morning to you. How are you?
Jaron, are you well?
Very well. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. And a bit of breaking news this morning. It was flagged, but it's confirmed that the Premier League has rolled over its broadcast deals in the UK. So Sky Sports, BT, Amazon and BBC Sport, for the same fees, was over £4 billion the last time, and they've rolled over these deals without the need for a tender process through consultation with the UK government. So until 2024-25, we're going to have the same deals, the same amount of games, and on the same channels in the UK.
How does everybody feel about this?
I think happy. I think the clubs will be definitely happy. There's more money going to football below the Premier League, but I think Sky and BT, they're not getting into auctions. There's not the threat of, there's always that unknown provider that can come in that you don't know about in the sealed envelope. So I think the status quo is probably good for everybody. And the Premier League then will always then try to bump up their international rights, which has been growing exponentially over the last few tenders. So I think from everybody's perspective, it's a win-win.
From a fan's perspective?
Look, I still think people will pay for it, and that's the market price. I don't think subscriptions are going to materially go down, even though we've had a pandemic. I can just see everything rolling on. Go on.
My view on this is that the way that people consume football has changed radically with the invention of Now TV, now, where you can pay for a game, and it's actually relatively affordable compared with previously you had to have that full subscription. Now, obviously, there were deals, and you can get the first 3 months for reduced price, or you can get them bundled with your broadband or with your phone or whatever. But ultimately now, being able to buy single games for a tenner, generally, I think has been a massive transformational shift in what people think about paying for versus what they would have thought about paying for previously. And you see the massive slew of subscriptions that have essentially come into being in the last 5 years, 8 years, since people decided that it was okay to pay for Spotify. You've seen massive amounts of new subscriptions for smaller amounts than my full broadband or paying for Sky Sports. And I think that the TV companies have realised this, and they've made games available on a much cheaper basis on a one-off. And I don't think pay TV is the evil that everybody thought it was 20, 25 years ago. Far from it, actually. It has absolutely raised the standard of the product that we're watching when it comes to Premier League football. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with club rugby over the next while. So we've just seen the announcement in the last few days about Virgin Media and RTE sharing the rights for the Six Nations for the next while. We were going to talk about it yesterday with Neil on the Tadhg 5, but we ran out of time. We will definitely talk with him about it again, because he's got very strong views about how successful it's been for Australian rugby to have that on free-to-air terrestrial TV. Very interesting to see what happens. The Sunday Times were reporting that the word in the street is that RTE are going to get the Pro 16 next year, and I'm just wondering, if there's already a broadcaster out there, why is the taxpayer footing the bill for Pro 16 rugby? Like, I don't know. I don't think pay TV is the evil, the bogeyman that we have been told by so many people.
It's going to be interesting to see what the Premier League do if there is going to be a change down the line. Obviously, this is until 2025, so the status quo is until then. But the interesting thing about now is that that is a Sky product. What if the Premier League want their own version of now, which was seen to be the innovations that the Super League were going to try and bring in, where they would have its own platform like the NBA and NFL have in certain markets, where you can follow your team or you can buy certain matches directly from the Premier League. I wonder, could we get to a point where maybe the on-demand element of things could actually be provided in a way that removes the middleman, which is the broadcaster. Right now, it's a very cosy partnership, Sky and BT and the Premier League. It's quite symbiotic. I'm not sure how Amazon would feel about this. I assume that they would have wanted more rights going into this, but the status quo has been maintained. I know from a fan's perspective in the UK, one of the big sticking points of this now is that BT are going to protect their 7:45 or 8 o'clock kickoffs, whatever it is, on a Saturday night, because, of course, BT famously broadcast the Des Kelly versus Jurgen Klopp interview earlier this season, where Jurgen Klopp was fuming that he had to play Champions League and then a half-12 game on a Saturday. BT say in order to combat that, they will have evening time games in the Premier League. Now, Premier League fans who like to travel to away games and have those Saturday night games will be fuming about this. I would say Jurgen Klopp is a little bit to blame for that.
I would say about the individual clubs setting their rights, that was possibly something that would have been mooted for this deal, but the pandemic has interrupted everything and they've just rolled over the status quo. I do think the fan experience is also around a lot of things around the game as well, just as the game. So I think the quality of the product is important. I think the Gary Neville, Jamie Carr, all that Monday Night Football, Souness, Roy Keane, all that kind of stuff is just as important as the actual games themselves. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration when you're talking about the experience of actually forking out a subscription per annum or per month for Sky and for all of these matches. So I think the Premier League is cognizant of that. And also they do have room to experiment on the fact that they keep on making more and more money out of the global deals that they do, as opposed to the domestic ones, which are actually more important now.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's the last deal, I think, was the first time that they were level. So it'll be interesting to see what they get this time. John, we're completely out of time. Have you 30 seconds for me?
Man United Liverpool on OTB Sports Radio tonight. Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr from 8:15. You can check out my column on the soul of football, based on what we're discussing about the competition for titles, is on OTBSports.com.
The soul of football is alive and well. That's the conclusion that John comes to, but worth digging that out on the OTB Sports app. John Duggan, good stuff. Thanks very much. You can hear more from John on Saturday afternoon, of course, on Off the Ball on News Talk. Mystery voice very quickly for you. As we mentioned earlier, we've got a brilliant prize for you this morning. We're giving away 2 Mighty Ducks jerseys before the end of the show to mark the new series, which has been released exclusively on Disney Plus, The Mighty Ducks Game Changers, to mark one of the greatest underdog stories we've ever seen. Who is this manager?
I want to pay a pizza, but my players doesn't want pizza. Maybe they don't love a pizza. Because I said, when we make clean sheet, I pay to everybody a pizza.
You can WhatsApp your answer to us, 0879 180 180, and we'll announce the winner at 9:30 this morning with Sue on our TV slot. Now, we're doing our contenders slot, and what is the truth about Galway? It's a perennial question. I'm delighted to say Michael Meehan is back with us to answer it this time. Michael, what is the truth about Galway? Good morning to you. Nice handy question to get us going.
Hey, Ger, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, so I suppose new year, hope springs eternal. Second season under Porry Joyce and his management team, and if we look back at last year, it was a tale of 2 seasons within one for everyone, but most noticeably for Galway. And just they weren't comparable from league to championship, and that's what, you know, just let them down. Or sorry, they weren't comparable pre-COVID to post-COVID, shall I put it, because we came back in September, October with League against Mayo in Dublin and Championship against Mayo. And, you know, from a Galway's fans' perspective, we just didn't hit the heights that they were hitting in the spring. You know, there was some really good games and really good performances under their belts. You know, I'm in Tuam here this morning for work, and down the road in Tuam Stadium, they hockeyed Tyrone. You know, it was 20-odd points, I think. So I think second year round, you know, Pádraig, although won't have a lot of hands-on time, I'm sure there's plenty of Zoom work done, just trying to work on philosophies and core beliefs and the pillars that they want to build on, the good stuff they want to build on last year. And just, you know, he's going to bring in a lot of new players. I threw my eyes over the panel there. There's a huge amount of youth in it. And having come from the under-20 squad as manager, Pádraig is bringing a lot of his players through. And I think we're going to see a big imprint on the team from Pádraig this year. You know, on the back of that, there's the retirements and there's people who've left the panel as well. So there's a lot of personnel change. And I think Pádraig will be pushing forward with his beliefs that he wants Galway to go, you know, not all guns blazing, but certainly, you know, attack, and put their best foot forward. And, you know, there's no margin for error with the condensed league and the knockout championship. So it's a pressure stakes environment. And I'm sure he's hoping that his young guns are just going to, you know, they're not going to shirk from it. They're going to stand up for it and give a good account of themselves.
Are there significant injuries and retirements? Or is there a bone of experience gone?
There is. So on the retirement front, Gareth Bradshaw and Gary Syce, you know, which would be two long-standing servants to Galway. A couple of players have left the panel. I suppose, again, most noticeably Michael Daly, Ian Burke, Adrian Varley, Fintan O'Curry. And they're all guys who would have played a lot of championship, you know, for Galway over the last 6 or 7 years, or Liga and championship, essentially. And on the injury front, Killian McDade, who had returned from international rules and hooked up with Galway last year and had played a lot of football with Galway, he's just out for, I think he's a 12-week thing with a knee. So, like, unless you're getting to an All-Ireland semi-final or further, you know, that's his season as well. And he would have been one of the key players, you know, who would have come back into the panel. John Daly was one of Galway's best players in the earlier parts of last year in the league, especially until he picked up a serious knee injury, and he's been out for about 12 months at this stage, but he's making good progress. He's expected to return, hopefully maybe towards the end of the league or championship. And to me, he's a key player. He's a centre back, and he made that position his own last year. He's a young fella in his, you know, second or third season, so he's key if he can come back fit to Galway. So they're all the guys that are missing, you know. So there's a good chunk, there's a good turnover there. I suppose on the flip side, what you have, Ger, is you have the likes of Peter Cook returning. He took a year out and went to the States. The last time we saw him play for Galway, he kicked 4 points from midfield against Mayo in Limerick, albeit in a Super 8 game, albeit you know, Mayo went on to win well that day, but he had a strong performance from midfield. So there's a lot of people around Galway excited to have him back. And then you have there's a lot of under-20s who won the All-Ireland late last year, who are coming back into the fold as well. So there's a lot of change, a lot of turnover in that panel.
Pádraig, Joyce was saying that Peter Cook is the first man to come back from New York in good shape. So that's positive news for Galway this year. Like, when it comes to analysing what actually happened last year, like, I mean, as you say, COVID was just... Galway seemed to be the team most affected by that long layoff. I wonder, though, did the nature of the defeat to Mayo in the league have an impact as well, Michael? Just the way it was such a hammering, and there was always the sense that they were going to go toe-to-toe again in a meaningful game. And while that was a closer game, I wonder, was their mentality affected a little bit by what had happened a few weeks previous?
Yeah, I agree, Eoin. It's hard, you know, to take a trimming like that and so quickly have to come back to it. There's always going to be a bounce back and a motivation to do so, but I think it knocks the stuffing out of you, and I believe that would have played an impact. Now, you got to remember, there was still a very fine margin. It was a 1-point victory in Salt Hill that day in Mayo's favour. Now, Mayo, they weren't efficient up front. They had a lot of pot shotting, and I'm sure they learned a lot from that experience. But in the first half, Galway were just turning ball over easily. It was being kicked into the full forward line and it was coming back twice as quick. So you know, there was a very fine margin in it. You know, whenever in the championship fixture, the seeds of doubt may have been sown, you know, from the trimming in the league. But I suppose what you got to remember is every game, quite famously, takes on a life of its own, as we know. And you know, whereas Galway might have went in with those seeds of a little bit of doubt into that championship match in Pearse Stadium, and maybe that's what kind of left them, you know, very, very off the mark in the first half. I think they realised then that, hang on a second here, Mayo were there for the taking, and it very nearly could have happened. So, you know, as a player, again, you have to kind of take it upon yourself not to carry the weight of that, and go on to the next fixture, the next match, you know, with a hardened mind that, you know, this is our day and nothing can happen here. So I'm sure that a lot of Galways, when they look back on 2020, it would be around those two Mayo games. Or, you know, it's just the performances in those games. The fact that it was Mayo, it doesn't really account for much, but it's the performances in those two games.
At the same time, like, Mayo were definitely the second best team in Ireland last year. I don't think anybody kind of argued with that. Yeah. So that must be the positive message that Pádraic Joyce is hammering home, that even though post-COVID there wasn't a great Galway performance there, it was still a kick of a ball between them and Mayo at the end of the day. So on a positive note, that must be the thing that's being hammered home.
Oh, I've no doubt. I've no doubt. And so it should be. And I know there's a lot of other factors at play there, just with the way it was straight to an All-Ireland semi-final for Mayo in the year that was, in the year that it was. But yeah, and again, as a player, that's something you're going to have to, you know, cling on to, or just certainly have at the back of your mind in everything that you're doing. And especially now that the year that's in it, we have the traditional provincial status, and if Galway are to progress, they have to beat Roscommon and more than likely face Mayo, and then you're to an All-Ireland semi-final again. So it's a real old school, you know, win your province kind of year again, and I'm sure very much that's on the radar for Galway.
I can't see Mayo being happy about facing Galway in a Connacht final this year, with the way that last year went, and like, are Mayo going to improve significantly from last year? A big question. Obviously, they will think they will, but like, Galway came back from that trimming and ran them to a point, despite the fact going into the match we were all like, geez, there's no way Galway are going to be able to come back from the absolute hammering that they took. So I don't know, the way you talked about it at the start, it felt a little bit like an NFL team getting a draft through of all the best young college players. So there must be incredible excitement about that crop of youngsters and how quickly they can bed in.
Definitely. Now, one kind of caveat on that, I suppose, Jerry, is that these are now under 20s, they're not under 21s. Okay, so if you rewind 5, 6, 7 years ago, you know, or maybe 10 years ago, the step up from under 21 to senior wasn't as wide as the step up from under 21 to senior is now, in terms of conditioning, etc. And all of a sudden the guys, they're a year younger coming through. So it's only the real cream of the crop that will make the step up, you know, seamlessly as a 20 or a 21-year-old. But you would hope that there are a few there. We had, you know, Paul Kelly was an under 20 last year, and he stepped in and he started the championship against Mayo. There's the likes of, you know, Jack Glynn. He was under 20 captain last year. He's a tigerish cornerback. He was man of the match in the All-Ireland final. So he's another guy who has gone from a feeder squad outside of the main squad that Galway are running up to the main squad, which is, you know, maybe 36 or 8 players. But, you know, he's put his hand up, and there's a couple of guys like, you know, Matthew Tierney has been a super player for a couple of years for Galway, underage as well, and there's pedigree there. So there's a lot of excitement. And again, if you take from what Mayo did with how they brought through the raft of young players, especially last year under James Horan, you know, if you can mirror that as well, you know, there's a sense of, well, if Mayo can do it, Galway can do it, or, you know, whoever else can do it as well. So, of course, it's not as simplistic as that, but at the same time, you need those things as players to kind of to motivate yourself, or as management to kind of say, look, this isn't uncharted water here. I think the interesting at the back of it all is just James Horan back in charge of Mayo, and, you know, his successful record against Mayo as a manager in his first stint, and then he's bounced back since again, and he's gone and won it back over Galway. So, if and when a game comes down the road, Galway-Mayo, that'll be a little sideshow as well to it.
One thing we've been asking everybody in these preview slots, Michael, is about the team's identity. And with Galway, it felt over the last year under Project Joyce, regardless of results here and there has been more of a connection with what Galway football should be all about. My question to you is it a style of football that will get them back to the last four once again, like the Kevin Walsh style of play did in 2018?
Yeah, so you're right. When you think of identity, and I think that the team's identity is changing from what it was in Kevin Walsh and during his era, and we know the core principles of what he did and where he brought the team. So Pádraig, would have openly acknowledged that he's trying to change it somewhat. Now he's not throwing everything out. If you think back to that game against Mayo in the championship last year, there was large elements where there was a retreat, there was defend in numbers. I think he's just, as the player that he was and how he liked the game to be played, Pádraig, it's go forward and go fast. Go forward ball and get it moving fast. And he was always a believer in, the ball will travel faster than the man. So foot passing and direct play is going to be part of his identity. It's something that we saw last year, and I'd say it's throughout the, games are going to come thick and fast now. We're going to see them trying a lot of things to try and bed in come championship. And it's hard to believe championship's only 7 weeks away for Galway and Roscommon. That they want to bring the identity, I think, directness, a hardened championship outfit, a difficult team to beat, a team that are dogged and determined as well. And if you can bring that with just that little bit more of directness and to kind of utilise some of the key players that Galway have, in the likes of maybe Shane Walsh and Damien Comer, I'd love to see a huge season from him. He's had a checkered few seasons, primarily through injury and been absent in that regard. But if you can utilise the likes of Damien, we haven't really seen him under the Mark system. And he could be frightening if and when he's used at the right times in the right way. So, Eoin, you're saying, is it going to bring them back to a semi-final? I believe it can. You have to bring the best of everything. You have to bring the best of that attacking directness. You have to bring the dogged determinedness, the tightness at the back, the funneling players back. Like every team is doing it anyway. It's nothing new. It's there from what Kevin Walsh had done as well. It's just to tip the scales in the favour of forwards then in the attacking sense.
Michael, good stuff. We'll let you get to work. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cool, guys. See ya.
Michael Meehan there giving us his thoughts. That's pretty exciting. If you're a Galway fan, listen to that. You were coming into this going, you were essentially writing Galway off the record here. I'm opening the kimono.
The exact opposite. You can pull back.
You were like, Galway, no chance. They've got all those players missing. I'm
all up for the curtain being pulled back and everything. That is not what I said whatsoever. I think actually, yes, those players missing are a factor in maybe them getting over the line this year or going further than last year. But they're in a really, they were the best team to watch in football for a good section of last year, and that was in crap conditions, let's not forget. They were playing that football in the middle of winter, and then when they came back, there was, Project Joyce on, I think it was earlier this week, he was doing his press conference. He said that there was they had 18 or 19 lads for training for one of their first county sessions once they came back. We had Davy on the show earlier on, and Wexford were obviously a little bit hampered by what happened on a club level last year. With no disrespect to the club game, it's just every county was doing it differently and some counties got affected by it. I think Galway actually were one of those counties who got affected by it as well. And 18 or 19 lads at an inter-county session, it's not exactly 100%. What you'd expect. So I think there is a lot of legitimate reasons why Galway didn't perform last year.
And they were only a point behind that Mayo team. I'm not convinced that Mayo were the second best team. I'm not happy to just shoo them into that position.
Last year I think they were.
I'd like to have seen them go up against Tyrone in Championship. I'd like to have seen them go up against Donegal in Championship. I think those games were pretty close to being the toss of a coin.
Yeah, maybe. But you see, the thing with Mayo is that it's always looked on paper like that should be the case, that they may not be the second best team in the country, and then all of a sudden you actually see them play. And Donegal are a great example when it came down to it the year before. I know it was in Castlebar, but it was the winner goes to the semi-final, and Mayo beat them.
Yeah.
And that's when Mayo show up, except if it's in All-Ireland, unfortunately.
We want to tell you about this. It's our brand new weekly GAA football podcast. on Off the Ball. Episode 1 of the Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran is available to listen to right now. It's on the OTB Sports app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can get it on Go Loud, you can get it on Spotify, you can get it on iTunes, you can get it everywhere. The best place is obviously the OTB Sports app. You'll find it if you search for the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy and hit subscribe while you're there. And that way, if you do it on the app, you can turn on notifications for that particular one. So every Wednesday when we upload it, you'll get a little ping and you can go and listen to it. If you are already subscribed to the GAA feed on OTB, you can get it there as well. Here's a taster on what Kerry need to do to challenge the Dubs this year.
Some days Clifford is going to be taken out of it, and that's when you need Gainey to come in. You need them to supplement each other. Now, you don't go into Paul Gainey and say, right, Gainey, you're the second best. Gainey does his job. I think naturally as a forward, Paddy definitely knew with Bernard, like with Killian, with Conor Mort, I definitely knew it at times as well. Do you know what I'm saying? But you need fellas to do different jobs. So if we look at
But that's the experience, Andy, we're talking. And that's the challenge for Tyrone or Galway, these guys. But Kerry have that experience. Peter Keane has been there. Gainey has been around the block. He's been one of the top forwards. If I'm using my example for playing with Dublin, I was playing full forward, but I was never a scorer for us. And the reason being, Bernard Brogan's standing there beside me, or Dean Rock is standing there beside me. They are the most lethal pair of finishers, or Paul Mannion or Con O'Callaghan. And I understood that, okay, my role, the way Dublin are playing, let's kick the ball up the pitch. I might have to make that first run 40 yards out and collect the ball from our halfbacks or midfielders, probably 45 or 50 yards from goal. Now, I'm not in a particularly dangerous position then, but that is a key role to play because I can turn then, and our assassins, our lethal finishers, are now inside the 21. And I can kick the ball to Burno or to Con or to Mannion, the same way Andy would have done it with Mort or with Killian O'Connor later on. I understood that I was never going to score 5 or 6 points from play, really. Maybe on some days you can, and we're not telling Gainey or not saying to Gainey, you're not going to score, but it's linking with your other forwards. If Gainey stands there and Clifford's not there, then of course he's one of the main men. He should be staying close to goal. But it's finding the balance between the teams. If you have 6 forwards who want to stand there on the edge of the square and kick scores themselves, that is not going to work. You are not going to win All Irelands with that. And Gainey, as good as he is, because he is an exceptional player, probably needs to work a bit better with Clifford, because Clifford's the main man, and that's just the way it is, and you need to suck that up. I'm sure they do. I'm not saying they don't, but I think they can definitely get better at it, and they need to get better at it if they're gonna win the All Ireland.
Yeah, I'd have looked a lot, Tommy, at Gainey as a player when I was playing, and I'd been trying to learn stuff off him. I remember he did a really cute thing against in one game, I can't remember the year, where he stayed really out wide against C. Paddy. And I was just watching his movement and where he was going and how he was moving in behind Mick Fitz or Johnny Cooper at the time, and it was just I just thought it was really smart. So I don't think this needs to be a toll thing to Gainey.
Yeah, he knows.
Gainey now is at the age, he's at the brightness, he's a smart guy, he wants to win All Irelands. I think he'd be, it's just a natural thing you would do as a player, I think, and they've played together now enough. As Paddy says, he needs to get a bit more form back. And he needs to go. He needs to keep fit. But with the what?
No, I think that's the thing. I think it's his form. Probably he's had a couple of knocks and injuries. He's a little bit older. I think if he gets back to his best form, he's a smart player. Kerry guys are smart forwards. That it's just getting it running. And what it does, if Gainey's out, and you look at the Cork game last year, Sean O'Shea gets the ball or David Moore gets the ball at midfield, the entire defence knows this is going 50 yards to David Clifford.
Yeah.
The element of surprise is gone. The threat is all on one player, one side of the pitch. As good as Clifford is, it makes it so much more difficult for Kerry to rack up those scores. At their best, like I say, the Naughties team, Jack O'Connor, Pat O'Shea's team, they had 5 or 6 forwards. Stop the gooch, doesn't matter. Declan O'Sullivan's going to tear you to bits. And that's the balance to get Sean O'Shea, get Clifford, get Gainey, and Spillane coming in. They have the talent. It's just getting... If they work as a unit, and I just get the sense from the outside looking in that they've become complacent in their forward play because they have Clifford, and it's like, just let it into him, he'll do the rest. I don't think that's going to work. That's not going to fly to win an All Ireland.
When you think of that Cork game, Clifford scored that freak of a point from the sideline where the camera couldn't even catch it going over the barrel, went up that high. Yeah. He had that shot and goal from about 22 yards that I'm not sure anyone else in the country would have tried. But when you think of that game, they were forcing it. David Moran had those 2 bombs in extra time. Because that's probably it. Gainey missing is probably so. I'm actually, I hope Paul Ganey's playing at the weekend because I want to see this come to fruition.
So do I. This podcast is just useless, basically.
Anything else on Kerry go before we move on?
Just to go back to the David Moran point, and not to harbour on it, but like, you either want, like, the temptation here now is to play Jack Barry and Diarmuid O'Connor in the middle of the field.
Yeah. And where does Moran go?
To me, you shouldn't do that. You have to put Moran in there because you need to get the ball into the two boys. Okay, so you need a feeder, but you need to put if you want to play a player like David Moran, you need to put a protector there with him now. You can't just play and say, right, David, you need to run up and down the field. He's
not going to do that.
So Moran could play 11 like Johnny Buckley would have done for years.
Well, I don't think you need to do it.
I don't even know how to do that.
I remember when, right, so I'll give you an example from my playing career. I play inside forward 16 and 17. I'm out of the team. I've no chance of getting back into the team. I'm a 5-minute man at the end of the... By absolute... I don't know what happened. The gods were looking down at me, right? And just get in for the Kildare game. And basically all that happened, the most important player in my career, at the end of my career, was a guy called Jason Doherty, right? And he just literally did the running for me. So if Davy Byrne starts running, lads, with the ball, there's absolutely no chance of me catching him. Right? No matter how...
Wasting your time, yeah.
I don't think if I drove a Fiesta after him, I'd catch him. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's running up the field.
You're right, though. Like, it's madness. Like.
So all that happens is I get to the 45, and Jason Doherty looks after him. And now all of a sudden I'm in the full back line, marking maybe a Jack McCaffrey who's trying to cover for Davy Byrne. And now I'm marking a wing back, and that's what you want to do. You want to create. So you put in a protection for David Moran. You allow him to be a bit of a luxury because he's going to get you the ball up the field. But you need to put in a plan. I remember again, sorry now for harbouring it, but Philly McMahon marked Gooch in the 15 final after Gooch comes back.
Yeah.
Now, you can't come back from the cruciate and be aerobically fit enough to mark Philly McMahon in his pomp. You couldn't do it because the madman would just keep going forward.
He destroyed Aiden in the semi-final, didn't he, in the replay?
Yeah.
In the All-Ireland replay that year, yeah.
Similar story, just going forward, attacking.
But you have Johnny Buckley standing in the centre forward, marking Keane O'Sullivan, who's not going to move from 6. Now, why not just let Gooch mark Sullivan and let Buckley run after him? You know, and it was just, you could see Gooch's face. He was white in the face, just returning from a cruciate, under pressure, and Philly McMahon, I'd say, probably got man of the match today. So if you're going to play Moran, you want him to be your playmaker, you want him to be in the middle of the field, you put protection around him, and you see, can you get the two boys into the Gainies, the Donohues, the Cliffords, the Sean O'Shea's, and see how it develops then from there.
Right, good stuff. The lads are fixing it for everybody there.
Yeah,
giving away state secrets. Is Tommy there? Yeah, Tommy.
How are things?
Your like football IQ is going up. We can see it on the screen. You're like,
completely.
Wow, this is good. I can't wait to get to training and try this stuff out.
Oh, 100%. I'm off screen there taking notes half the time. I must tell the Meath Hill boys about this. It's brilliant stuff. I was trying to make the case that it's going to be the best full forward line the lads have ever played in. You know, I'll take the 14 jersey. They can go 13 and 15. But they weren't really buying that. I don't think I'm going to get a chance to talk much football at all. But I'm happy to let them talk and try and soak in a bit of knowledge. They're great. Like I'm so excited for the season now, just from spending an hour and a half with the lads chatting yesterday. It is a lengthy first episode.
I was going to say, it's supposed to be 40 minutes. And it's like...
supposed to be 40 minutes. And I promised Nathan, when, you gave me the thumbs up to do this, I'd keep the boys in check. Don't worry, we'll keep it to 40, 50 minutes tops.
3 hours, episode 2, 6 hours, episode 3. And it's like...
And we had loads of stuff we didn't get to, Paddy Andrews' teammate, Philly Ryan, has just joined the Tipperary Footballers. So I kind of wanted to do a bit of a breakdown on a Dublin 2015 All-Ireland winner who's now playing for Tipperary this year. So we didn't even mention Tipperary. We didn't mention Cavan, the Ulster winners last year. So, there's going to be lots to talk about this summer, boys. It'll be hard to keep me shut up as well around the GAA. They're great.
That specific bit about the David Moran role, what did you think of that, Eoin?
That's interesting because the question is around who's going to partner David Moran, and it has been for the last little while. Like, Peter Keane has played 3 midfielders at times over the last little while. So, and
do you think trying to play the 3 midfielders is Peter Keane acknowledging what the lads are saying?
I think so. I think that there is, but I think what Keane wants is ideally somebody who can be an option at the kick out and also be an option when it comes to breaking forward and scoring. And I think in Diarmuid O'Connor they have that. The issue is Jack Barry, who's maybe a little bit more one-dimensional, still a great fielder of the ball, can still do a brilliant job against Dublin, but is he dynamic enough to maybe be an out-and-out, maybe half-forward if it comes to it? And that's maybe where the question mark is. So it's, for me, Diarmuid O'Connor has to be a starter for Kerry this year alongside David Moore, and I think there's a clear hierarchy there. He is going to become the next David Moore, and he is Kerry's best midfielder after Moore retires, and all their stock is in Diarmuid O'Connor. But it's what they do with Jack Barry, whether they start him or not. I'm not convinced necessarily that that's the way to go. I think that they started Adrian Spillane in the 2019 replay or drawn game, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe he's got more of a dynamism about him, to use that cliche, and can kick a score better, and I think that's what they'll go for. I think last year they were massively missing Stephen O'Brien, for example, from the start against Cork. I think that's another factor in that half-forward line. And in general, and this plays into the Paul Geaney conversation, Kerry's area that they need to sort out this year is their forwards. Like, it's never been an issue for as long as I can remember. Their goalkeeper is sorted, their six backs picked themselves, their midfield, as far as I'm concerned, picked themselves. The forwards is what let Kerry down last year as a result of Geaney's injury. They do, like, you can make a case that they do not have enough depth to win an All-Ireland up front, which is the first time you could ever say that about Kerry. Like, and that's why Geaney is so important. That I think I wrote it in my Kerry's Eye column this morning, actually, which goes completely in line with what the two lads were saying. Kerry will not win an All-Ireland this year.
Full plug there, Eoin, go on.
Kerry will not win an All-Ireland this year without a fully fit and firing Paul Geaney. There is no chance they win it without him. And people will say Clifford and Seanie O'Shea are the two main guys. They are. But to get the best out of them, Paul Geaney absolutely needs to have a big year because he is top quality. And if nothing else, he's just a distraction for everybody from Clifford.
Owen has managed to hijack our slot here where we were supposed to be talking to Tommy about his new podcast, but nice work, Owen. Well done.
That's okay. But Owen's spot on there. Like, I asked the lads the question, is it dumbing it down too much to ask them, is Paul Geaney supposed to be a facilitator? And they were like, kind of, but no. Like, Paul Geaney has to nearly take the brunt of the pressure off David Clifford whenever he can. And if it comes to a day where Clifford just isn't firing, Geaney has to turn up and score 3 or 4 points from play. Andy Moran was making the point that they used to get 1.5 men to mark Bernard Brogan. But, like, what was the point? Paddy Andrews would kick 5 points in play if they did that. So the whole thing was about, a lot of the podcast was about the units and could you have a pot of 3 that you were able to put your focus on your attack around. Paddy Andrews is so excited to watch Tyrone this year. He thinks that they're, the chains are going to be let off them after 20-odd years of Mickey Hart. There was no fear when Dublin faced Tyrone in 2018, even when Tyrone went a couple of points up. There was no fear in 2017 when Dublin hammered Tyrone. And he's really excited to see what Dooher can do with Tyrone this year. He's excited to see what Conor McKenna and Colin McShane might do together. Mark Bradley got a big plug. Andy Moran's excited to look at Galway this year under Joyce. Like Michael Meehan mentioned Peter Cook earlier on. He was talking about Cook and what Cook was like against them in the Super League that year, a couple of years ago as well. So, look, it's exciting. The whole thing was like, we barely touched on Dublin.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
barely
good.
touched on them.
But
like, they reckon Paul Mannion's going to be a massive loss.
I think so too.
We haven't spoken about it enough.
I think so too. I think that last year nobody was any good and everybody was kind of using the fumes of the previous years, and obviously Dublin were coasting off the back of 5 in a row. This would have been a year where we got to see whether or not Paddy Small can step up and be another Paul Mannion. But Paul Mannion was like absolutely sensational and one of the key trigger men for the defence. You would see him back at left corner back regularly and then popping up to fist the ball over the bar, 18 seconds later. Like, you can't take that out of the team in training week in, week out as well.
Some players can do that. Like, some players have the legs to do that. Like, we didn't probably get into it enough, but Paddy Andrews was talking about the role that he played for Dublin. He fulfilled when Bernard Brogan was inside of him and Dean Rock was inside of him, that he was the man clocking up 10, 11k.
Yeah.
Rock probably does that these days as well. But like, Andy Moran wasn't fit to do that when he was in the Mayo full forward line. Jason Doherty saved his career.
Well, and exactly. Look, that was a great piece that they just talked about there. It's full of little nuggets like that, and it's going to be every week, available every single Wednesday. It is our brand new podcast, The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran. Go check it out. New episodes every Wednesday throughout the summer. Coming up on Friday Night Racing this week, it's very special Friday Night Racing. It's Back on Track, Lessons from a Sporting Life with our partners, HRI. It's going to include Senna Nuupu, Ursula Jacob, Nikki Daly and Kate Harrington will be supporting the Breast Cancer Ireland Race Day at Leopardstown this Friday, the 14th of March. So the full race day is ultimately going to end up being a fundraiser for Breast Cancer Ireland, but the final race of the day goes to post at 5:25, and it's specifically for Breast Cancer Ireland. You can donate by texting the word CURE to 50500, and all €4 of that will go from most of the networks to Breast Cancer Ireland. You can also donate at breastcancerireland.com as well. And that show will play out this afternoon on our social channels, this evening on the radio, and again tomorrow in the Friday night racing slot as well. Here's what we got on OTB Sports Radio today. At 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is Centaur, the story of Declan Murphy, the remarkable story of his recovery from a horrific brain injury. The History of Sport lecture series with Paul Rouse. OTB Gold is Jerry Eisenberg on Ali at 6, and then live tonight the show with Nathan from 7 o'clock, which obviously has Liverpool against Manchester United live in the Premier League. That is the crack on that this evening. Up next this morning on OTB AM, we've got our TV picks with Sue Murphy. Stay tuned.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB.
For Sterling! Raheem Sterling!
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. It is time for television. Sue Murphy, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Very well. So what are we looking at this week?
More grimness. The Underground Railroad is on Amazon this Friday. I got to see, they actually sent me the entire series, but I could only get through the first episode because it's tough going. I don't know if you know the book. It's Colston Whitehead. It was a Pulitzer Prize winning book. I actually haven't read it, but it's meant to be absolutely amazing. So I think there's a lot of fans that are going to come to that would be really disappointed if it's not faithful to it. But it's based on the idea of the network in the South that was trying to get slaves out just before the Civil War. And this one is based on Cora, and she's trying to get out of a plantation who has a really violent and horrible owner. And she escapes with her lover, friend, and they basically end up on an actual Underground Railroad. Now, it was only meant to be a metaphor, it was called the Underground Railroad, so it didn't actually exist as a railroad, but they actually have a railroad in the first episode. This is really tough going. I had to actually close all the curtains in the room where I was watching this because it's so dark. A lot of it takes place on the plantation in really dark rooms. When they get to the railroad, it's obviously pitch black. It is it's kind of hard to be able to see what's going on because it's so dark. And it is very dark content. So you have a really violent plantation owner that, at one stage, is having lunch with his friends. And in the background, there's a man being whipped who is then set on fire. And it's they're not afraid to go there. They will show you, if when you're watching something, you're like, they're not going to show me that, are they? No, it'll just show it to you. And it's directed by Barry Jenkins, who he directed Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk. This is honestly really, really, really good TV. It's excellent. It's probably one of the best things I've seen on Prime. But I have to warn people that if you're looking for something that's kind of escapist and you want to sit down and spend, life is grim enough at the moment. If you want to get away from stuff, it's very difficult to watch. I mean, there was no way I could have gone on to the next episode straight away. I really, the end of the first episode, I was like, need to just take a minute after that.
Right.
There's no let up for the first episode. And that's intentional. And that's the way it should be. That you're dealing with something, obviously, slavery in the South, which is a very difficult topic. But it's brilliant. Really good.
Barry Jenkins is obviously this genius, and I get the sense that he is very selective about what he does. I know he's a producer on this as well, so this is something that he's obviously put his heart and soul into. This is going to be, this looks really exciting, this whole project. As grim as it sounds, and as grim as the picture that you painted is, this looks like it's going to be possibly the television show of the year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of them. he's so passionate about the work he has. And I think that came across in Moonlight as well, because Moonlight was kind of like this really slow moving film, but you really identified with that character. You were really rooting for him and it was tough going for him. But he really got that across the screen. He's really wants to bring these black characters to the fore and to raise these issues. Like, he went on this rant a couple of weeks ago about how he's sick of listening to the white gaze, or how white people look on black people. He was like, why aren't we talking about the black gaze? He's so passionate about his filmmaking, and I'm just a huge fan. I'll definitely watch the rest of this, but I think I'll actually take it very slowly. It'll be a week by week kind of thing.
Right, okay, but it's all out right now, 11 episodes on Amazon.
It's on Friday. Yeah,
on
all
Friday,
episodes,
sorry. Brilliant.
Yeah, 10 episodes, sorry, 10 episodes. Yeah.
10 episodes, cool, perfect. I was thinking 11 was a bit odd. Next one up, we've got, are we going with something else new next?
Yeah, Domina. And I don't know if did you watch Rome? The one that was, it was a HBO.
I know the one you were talking about though.
Yeah, it's actually, it was one of those ones that we should probably do is go back and watch, because I loved Rome. I thought it was really, really good. And sometimes it's really hard to get those series right when you're dealing with kind of historical stuff, and they become very concerned about how things look as opposed to how the drama is playing out. And they did it really well because it came from the viewpoint of the soldiers. But this one is coming from the viewpoint of women in Rome. And the cast is kind of virtually unknown. So I was like, ooh, I don't know how this is going to go, because a lot of the time they seem to fall into this trap of, let's do a load of sex scenes and let's do a load of killing. And you're just like, okay, but there's other stuff that's happening in Rome that's kind of interesting. And they've nailed it here a little bit, because it's all about Livia Drusilla, who became the wife of Augustus, and she is smart. She's a real smart cookie, and she is on the outside at the start of it. After the death of Caesar, her family are looked on really badly. She loses all of her property, and she's basically trying to worm her way back into Rome, and ends up marrying the top guy. And it's actually very good, because these women are often ignored in these programs, but they were really clever, sometimes really manipulative. And I think they really get that across. But if you're looking for something that's just like a little bit escapist, looks great. I mean, the sets and everything look absolutely fantastic. I actually recommend this, because it's not as good as Rome. So if you're looking for Rome, just go and watch Rome. But it's still pretty good for what, like, I really was surprised that it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Does Liam Cunningham play the lead?
He's the dad, so he kind of, I won't give too much away, but he's dead in the first episode, so he comes to her a lot in flashbacks and how she remembers them, and he's a huge influence on her life. And that's actually true to life as well. He was a huge influence on the real Livia. But how they set up Rome and how Augustus became that leader is fascinating stuff. It's really, really interesting.
Right. It's actually been a pretty good few weeks for television, it seemed. We kind of all thought that the pandemic had put the halt on everything, and all of a sudden we've got all these new shows coming out. And is Sons of Sam new?
Yes, that went on to Netflix, I think it was last week. I hadn't actually checked it out. Like, I don't know if everyone else is like me. I'm getting a bit fatigued by the true crime stuff, and I love true crime. I think that's probably the problem. I've listened to Case File. I've listened to 140 episodes of Case Files, so I think I'm at the point where I'm like, probably just need to take a step back. But this is, like, if you know about Son of Sam, it's David Berkowitz, but they basically said that they don't think that he's solely responsible for all the deaths that occurred in New York, which were just random shootings of lovers in lovers' lanes and just random attacks on women. And there was this fear that kind of gripped New York. But what I really liked about this first episode is that they really got across how crap New York was in the 70s. Like, the high rates of crime, how crap it looked. Like, you know, we always have this kind of like, I don't know, kind of like a graph for New York, but they really get across that this wasn't a nice place to live in the 70s. And then you have the fact that this serial killer is just randomly shooting people on the streets. So it actually is a really good setup. And I loved all the New York detectives with the great New York accents who are explaining the case. That's really good. I just don't know if people are just getting a bit tired of, okay, I've seen a lot of this. But the actual centre of the story, it's a journalist called Maury Terry who was convinced that he wasn't the sole guy who was responsible for these murders. He's a really interesting character, and I actually want to see what happens with him, because he seems to be a bit of a forgotten part of the story, obviously, because the bigger story is the serial killer. But yeah, it's good. If you're into it, if you're a bit sick of those things, I'd probably give it a break.
Right, great stuff. There are 3 really good suggestions. I dare say the fourth on our list of new things to watch may not be amazing. I know you haven't watched it yet. It's called Oxygen. I'm looking at this now. It's a 6.4 on IMDb. I have not seen this either, but the description on IMDb, a woman who wakes up in a cryogenic chamber with no recollection of how she got there must find a way out before running out of air. Has she considered maybe opening the door of the cryogenic chamber and walking out and leaving the facility?
She does consider that. I actually watched the first hour of this last night and I turned it off because it was like, this is too claustrophobic. And I think for like all of us being stuck in our houses for the last year, not being able to go anywhere, like to watch somebody stuck in a chamber for an hour was like, I just can't. I can't take this right now. But Melanie Laurent plays she's the only person on screen and she is brilliant. Like she's a really, really good actress. She was in Inglourious Bastards. And this is Alexandre Aya. He directed Crawl. I don't know if you saw that a couple of years back. He's very good at like fun horror. So I think if you like Buried, if you liked Phone Box, like I think it's a real measure of an actor or actress to be able to hold an entire film just being in a box or in a phone box or something like that. So she's excellent. It's grand. It's just not brilliant from what I've seen.
Right.
But I've watched the first hour and I do want to go back and find out what happens. So
yeah, it's Oxygen, actually, to give it...
Oxygen, yeah, it's French.
It's French, yeah. An hour and 40 minutes, so not completely unworth your time, I'd imagine. 6.4 at the moment, but we'd love to hear your reviews of Oxygen if you're watching it. A couple of things that we might have missed. Sue, Russian Doll?
Russian Doll, they're actually looking at bringing out a set. So this was recommissioned for a second series in 2019, and because of COVID, it got put off. So the second series is coming out here this summer. Natasha Lyonne is the main character in this, and I absolutely love Natasha Lyonne. She's Nikki in Orange is the New Black. She has this great like New York accent and New York attitude, and she's just like a very New York themed week. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, to her executive producer on the show was Amy Poehler, and the two of them have she wrote and directed this, and she's the main character. And basically she goes to this party that's been held in her honor for her birthday, and she ends up dying at the end of the first episode, but then comes back to the party and she ends up in the bathroom in the party. And it's weird. There's 8 episodes in this. So when you're watching it, and I binge watched it, by the way, I watched all the way through, you just hear the same song over and over again when she wakes up and you're like, oh my God, I'm starting to go mad. And it is actually a very good way to watch it because you just experience what she's experienced, the pure frustration of why does this keep happening? Why do I keep ending up in this bathroom and dying? And there's one scene, and I think this is the 3rd or 4th episode, where she goes absolutely demented and starts killing herself, like throwing herself off stairs, trying to figure out why this is happening. But she is great. Like there's other characters that are in it, but it's mostly with her. Like she must be in every single scene in the entire series, and she just holds the camera the entire time with that great accent and that attitude. And I really enjoy it. Like it is a binge watch. You will just go straight onto the next episode. Like I did watch 8 in a row. Like
brilliant. Sounds great. Russian Doll. And then finally we check in on what you're continually watching at the moment, but you're just rewatching Line of Duty, it seems.
Yeah, I know. I've gone back. I'm on series 3 now. So we started watching because when we were getting to the last episode, I was trying to figure out who everyone was and how everyone connected. So we've gone back to season 1, but we didn't make it past it. So now I'm on season 3, and like I still think it's one of the best TV shows ever. I just absolutely love it. And you see more. You see, like when you understand who the people are that are involved, and you go back and watch it again, you're like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time around. That's very clever. So it's definitely worth the rewatch. I just love Line of Duty so much.
Has the finale gone down well? Has it been like universally applauded? No. No,
it's really like a lot of people are really disappointed. I think people expected more drama in the last episode. Like I was listening to Shrine of Duty, which is all I do at the moment, but they were saying that like there were opportunities for it to be dramatic and they didn't take it. And the actual points that they talked about in the final episode, you're like, oh yeah, I could see how that could have been more dramatic. But it was kind of like, oh, that's it. And I think a lot of people felt deflated by that. I actually really liked the ending. I thought it tied it up really well, but I can understand why people would be really disappointed. I don't think it's finished though. I think they're going to be back with another season.
Yeah, that'll be, like, there's definitely going to be some sort of mad PR push or some great stunt when Line of Duty comes back in a little while. So plenty of time to go back and watch it is what you're telling us, and we'll be ready for whatever the next season's going to be. Sue Murphy, as ever on a Thursday morning, thanks very much.
No problem at all.
Sue there with our TV picks, as I say, after 9 o'clock every Thursday. We get you geared up for what's on television if you want to take a little bit of break from the sport. Right, this morning we have had a pretty cool prize to give away on OTB AM. We had 2 Mighty Ducks jerseys with thanks to Disney Plus to mark the new series, which has been released exclusively on Disney+, which is called The Mighty Ducks Game Changers, which does sound class. As you can see on screen there are a couple of the jerseys, and it got us thinking about some of the greatest underdog stories in sport, and we asked you who this was.
I want to pay a pizza, but my players doesn't want pizza. Maybe don't love a pizza. Because I said, when we make clean sheet, I pay to everybody a pizza.
Turns out there's a lot of Mighty Ducks fans out there. We had hundreds of entries into that competition. Congratulations to David Keating and also Paul Dolan. You both guessed correctly. That was, of course, Claudio Ranieri early in that historic Premier League winning season. David had WhatsApped in with his answer to OTB 0879 180 180 0879 180 180. Save that number in your phone and WhatsApp us for the next competition. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Tomorrow morning we're going to be hearing from Alan Quinlan. We're going to be talking about Liverpool versus Manchester United, which is happening tonight. Amy O'Connor, the Cork Mokie star, will be with us, and Westmeath footballer John Egan as well. He's got a great story you'll want to tune in for. Right now though, brilliant Wednesday night rugby last night. It was Tadhg Furlong, it was Paul O'Connell in the company of Joe Malloy.
Something a bit different for you on tonight's Wednesday night rugby, which is brought to you with thanks to Vodafone. We recorded a chat with Paul O'Connell and Tadhg Furlong yesterday as part of a Vodafone staff event, largely a Lions focus to it. We'll bring you that very, very shortly. The lads in good form. But first, what didn't come up so much with the lads yesterday, the Tadhg Furlong contract situation. He was talking to the media at large about that yesterday. So it's a one-year deal, as you know. Struck a lot of people as being on the short side, and also agreed quite late in the season. So he addressed firstly here why it took so long, quite a protracted negotiation.
I suppose it was delayed the start of negotiations really across the board because of the situation we're in, and then I was coming back from long-term injury. I wanted to get back playing, and when you're playing big game weeks, you don't want to be talking contracts. So it probably all added into it, you know.
And in terms of the injury, I mean, David mentioned that in his statement. I mean, was that a big sticking point in terms of you guys trying to get what you wanted from the deal?
I don't think it was a sticking point, or wasn't overly talked about really. It probably delayed the start of it as much on my side as anything, where, you know, you have a bank of work in front of you and you just want no distractions and you want to get out there and get back playing. And when you do get back playing, you want to, I suppose in big game weeks, you don't want that in your head other than playing a bit of ball. So, yeah, look, I suppose the one-year deal probably suited me best for a number of reasons, really. But I would say is, you know, I'm very happy where I am playing rugby. I'm very happy in Leinster. I'm very happy in Ireland. I'm well looked after in terms of, you know, not only game management, but like relationship with physios, coaches, how we want to play. You know, there's a good group of us now who kind of came through the academy together, and we're going to kind of get that to that 27 to 29, 30 age bracket. So, look, I'm very happy where I am. I signed a year because it kind of suited me more than anything, really, and see where we are again next year. Yeah, well, like a lot of lads have signed one-year deals in, you know, the current term, and it's no different for them either, you know what I mean? And look, I suppose there is the element of risk in it from my point of view in terms of injury or selection or performance, etc. But I suppose you just have to get on with it, don't you? And if you start thinking like that, you're in trouble.
Can you just confirm that there was the offer of more than 1 year on the table for you?
There was the offer of more than 1 year on the table.
Yeah.
There you are. So some of Tadhg Furlong addressing the contract situation yesterday. Hopefully in a year's time or less, he's announcing a 3, 4, 5 year deal, anything he wants, and he's around for a long time to come. So we'll dive into the chat here with Paul O'Connell, Tadhg Furlong yesterday, largely Lions focused, this one.
Fellas, you're both welcome. I'm sure everybody tuning in knows the general deal here, certainly from a Lions perspective. We have Paul O'Connell, who's been on 3 tours, captain in 09, he was there in 05 and 13 as well, and Tadhg Furlong heading off on his second tour, which is great. Tadhg, where did you watch the announcement?
I watched it in the hotel. We're still in quarantine, so kind of on your own. So it was nerve-wracking. God, I was nervous.
Would you stop? You were not nervous. You knew damn well you were going. Come off that now.
No, genuine now. Joey boy, don't be tempting fate with me here. Yeah, so I had a thing all along. It's like, I'm watching this, and the last time in 2017 we were in train, you see, so lads were chatting, you only got in to see the names being read out, but I was in for the whole build up this time. And just the longer it went on, I was thinking to myself, no, if my name comes out here, I'm coming out after Toby Faletau. So I was watching it, and Toby Faletau comes out, and then Xander Fagerson came out, and just for those 10 seconds before I was next, I was bricking it. So I was absolutely over the moon. Yeah, delighted.
I'm sure you saw Kyle Sinclair's interview over the weekend. I mean, that's the other side. It is horrific if you don't get that call.
Yeah, and you feel for him. I suppose he was very honest in how he felt, and he had his emotions out there. And look, I don't pick teams, but you still have a bit of empathy and feel a bit sorry for those who don't get picked,
Paul O'Connell, you're looking at this squad that Gatland has picked. What clues does it give you as to how he's going to go about his business against South Africa? What jumps out to you about this squad and the makeup of it?
I don't know. It's very hard to tell. He's obviously picked some big men, which Gatland always does. And you probably need them against South Africa as well. I would imagine that they won't play a lot different to what they did in the World Cup. Rassie has a formula that he sticks to. It generally revolves around territory. He's not too bothered about possession. The less possession he has, really, the better for him in some regards. Line out, maul, scrum. He wants less rucks than the opposition. He wants to make more tackles than the opposition. And he wants a really long kicking game. So I don't think he's going to move away from that, particularly when you look at the success they had in it in the World Cup. So he's trying to pick a team, I presume, to prepare for that. And they nearly got all of those things right when Wales played them in the World Cup. I think the only one they might have lost is Rassie is big into turnovers conceded as well. And I think that's the only one Wales lost in that game. They conceded a maul penalty late in the game as well, which South Africa kicked, and that was the 3 points that won them the game. So it's about trying to play his own game, but also, I think, trying to stop what South Africa are doing as well. So it's going to be tricky. And I suppose one of the things you look at when you look at the squad, there's a few strange selections, but I suppose he's very experienced as a coach. He's very experienced as a Lions coach, and I'm sure he has a strategy in mind with the selections.
Yeah, he has a habit of being vindicated by with his stranger selections in time. Gets criticism up front and then is sitting pretty at the end.
Yeah, I think he makes a decision and he backs someone to do something, and he backs them so much that, very often it works out. So it's tough. It's tough for some of the Irish guys that have been left out, and it's disappointing for them, It's going to be a very tough tour. The way they're kind of going to be in a bit of a quarantine, the way there isn't going to be a lot of outside the hotel, even the way, I only noticed a few days ago, there's no midweek games in the last 4 weeks of the tour. So there's going to be a lot of players that actually aren't going to be, they might play a game on July 14th and the last game is on August 7th. They may not be involved again. And it's a tough station. And some guys, as happy as some of the tours that I've been on have been, some guys haven't coped well with not being picked.
No, that could be tough. There could be a lot of room service and sitting in your hotel room those last 4 weeks for lads.
Yeah, listen, I'm sure the guys will, come up with something to make it an entertaining and fun tour. You need characters to do that, but it is going to be tough. Everyone going there is used to being picked all their lives. They're used to being first choice all their lives almost. So those last 4 weeks are going to be a real challenge for 15 or 16 guys on that tour.
Yeah, I can imagine. Tadhg, how did you find 2017 and the length of the tour and the intensity of the tour? I remember quite well talking to you shortly afterwards, and I think you were sort of saying, geez, wasn't too sorry to get home and get a bit of my own company and my own personal space for a while. You know, like you're fairly locked in there, and that'll be even more the case this time around. How did you find 17?
Yeah, like initially at the time, it's tough work. Like I'm sure Paul will agree. You're going for it from the moment you get out there, obviously, because you want to make an impression and train. Every game is like the biggest game of your life because you're trying to reach the pinnacle of getting picked for a test game. So the pressure and the physical aspect of it is tough. But it's only when you look back on it, you kind of say, it's class. I want to go on another one. And it's kind of that materializes over time. So, yeah, I think everyone's just raring to go for it.
What was COVID life like in the Six Nations? Was it, once you got in the bubble, was it pretty normal, or was it... I was hearing things like you were almost encouraged not to hang out with people in the same position as you, so you wouldn't take down, so one prop wouldn't take down all the props kind of thing. Was all that stuff part of life?
Yeah, I suppose it was the new normal for us for that period, really, and we just had to do, I know it sounds awful to say this, but the players just had to do what they were told, really, in some respects, of where to sit and, the table seating plan. And but, we were still lucky that we had that social aspect where a lot of people didn't have. You could still talk to people. We're very lucky that way, and to get out and about and still, live our life as normally as we could under circumstances, I suppose.
Yeah. So who would you say beside the same people every day type thing?
We kind of did it in rotations for a week. I think Ger Carmody came up with it, the table seating plan, and Derby very organised now in Ireland. And so try to mix it up, but very rarely in the same position as you, just in case someone came down, you'd be all close contacts and just you wouldn't have a tie head.
Yeah. Did it affect preparation on the field, Paul? Like, were you limited in what you could do at scrum time or things like that? Or once you're on the training field, were all bets off?
No, we weren't limited in terms of how we trained. We were probably limited in terms of the meetings we could have and where we could have meetings. So we met in the indoor pitch quite a lot with a TV where we had guys, it's a big open air facility. It was quite hard to communicate to the big group. Guys weren't seated, so it was probably a little bit more difficult to take notes or whatever. So the meetings were a little bit more challenging, but from a training point of view, we were fine. We were able to train as much as we would have done previously. We were able to do walkthroughs as much as the guys would have done previously. So that wasn't a challenge. But I think the thing about eating is, we're at three at a table, and I suppose there was maybe 25 tables in the dining room, and if there was 8 of you eating and none of you were at the same table, you just hear the clicking of forks on the plates because you couldn't really chat. And that is the challenge, because you want guys to be able to sit down and relax with one another and chat about everyday things, but you want them chatting about the game and little things from training as well. And maybe that didn't happen as much, but I think the players made a great fist of it, because it certainly wasn't easy. It was very challenging. We couldn't do a lot of the things that Andy would have liked to have done in terms of lightening the mood and in terms of helping players switch off. So players were incredible, and it showed in terms of how they played so well at the end of the tournament after 6 or 7 weeks in that type of atmosphere. It was a real credit to them.
Yeah, that mingling, that's essential with the Lions, really, isn't it? Getting to know fellas over a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it is. And, one of the things, Clive tried to copy things from England in 2005. So we had a team room separate to where we ate, and we had an analysis room separate to that, and then we had a physio room separate to that. Whereas in 2009, I suppose we learned from that, and we tried to do everything in one room. So it was actually quite hard to get hotels. So you could be doing analysis 6 feet away, someone could be getting a massage, and 10 feet away, someone could be eating their dinner. Like, we were just trying to spend as much time together as possible. And it really helped the tour because, you know, you just don't have time. You need to take every opportunity to get to know one another. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that on this tour. You know, even in 2009 in Johannesburg, we had a small outdoor area. I remember they moved in 3 big jacuzzis out there, and Craig White wanted guys, you know, he was big into sleep at the time, which, you know, every S&C coach is into now, but he wanted guys in there before they went to bed in the evening. So you could come down some evenings at 10 o'clock. There'd be 15 or 16 guys in jacuzzis out the back, just chatting, and the heat helps you sleep or whatever. But you'd imagine those things, those little tricks that they were doing to get people to spend time together, you'd imagine the Lions aren't going to be able to do that. And it's different with Ireland. Guys know each other already. They don't need to spend the time investing in each other, whereas on a Lions tour, you really do need to do it.
Yeah, all of those things you describe are almost the opposite of COVID protocol, really, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. The South African props then, Tadhg, I'm curious, what kind of challenge do they pose? Do they scrummage in a certain way? Obviously, they're all big men. What's that going to be like?
Yeah, aggressive, I would have said. You know, it's hard to look at them because they haven't played a game since the World Cup really as a unit. But I think everyone's overriding memory from the World Cup is, you know, scrum dominance, and I suppose that's a thing in all aspects of their forward play, be it maul, line out defence, ruck, carry, scrum. They're always just looking for those little one-ups on you where they can maybe eke a penalty and gain a little bit of possession and territory, and then they go at you again. So, you know, I think everyone knows they're huge men, and they're very, very aggressive. So, you know, it's such a pivotal part of the game for them, and such a strength. So, you know, there's massive challenges there for us.
Yeah. You must have come up against them a few times. How have you got on generally?
Again, it's a good while ago, and it was under different management, really. So I would have toured there in 2016, where Rossi started the first and third test, and I started the second one. We played them at home then the following November, or the November after. I'm not sure off the top of my head. You know, but again, sport changes, rugby's changed, and their team has changed. Different personnel, different coaching, different emphasis on stuff, and you know, I think it'd be very interesting to get a read of, you know, some of the English players who've worked with Matthew Proudfoot, who was their scrum coach in the World Cup, and just to pick their brains a little bit about what he tried to implement with England, what he learned from the World Cup, etc., etc. So there's something to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. So at this stage, you would be pretty experienced, I think. I know props can mature that bit later, and they have to catalogue a lot of experiences in the scrum to really hit their peak. Generally, at this stage, you're not coming up against anything you haven't seen before when it comes to scrummaging, are you? You must be rare. You're in a scrum going, geez, I haven't felt this before. What's going on here? Do you generally now have a good feel for everything they're throwing at you?
No, I wouldn't say everything. I think in scrummage a lot of time it's about trying to get your cohesion right as a front three and a front five and an 8. So you feel comfortable because in your own, looking after your own bits first, where you know the connections are strong, you're all on the same page, and then it's opposition and what they're doing. And look, I always say that I can't see what you see on the television when I'm actually in a scrum. I can only remember what it felt like, and then I have to match up with the feeling with the picture afterwards, if that makes sense. And I suppose as people used to always say to me, it used to frustrate the life out of me when I was younger, that, you know, it's experience, time in the saddle. But I suppose as you maybe get on a little bit, you do understand that a little bit more, and how to problem solve within that, and matching that feeling to the picture you see on the outside in game or in training or what have you, and coming up with a solution to the problem.
Half time must be crucial then these days with video analysis. You can get in, have a look at this, see what he's doing, get a few overhead shots, and maybe sort something out for the second half. Is that a bigger part maybe of the game than 10, 15 years ago?
I didn't play 10 or 15 years ago.
Back in the old days when O'Connell played,
A lot of time it's just a calm chat. What are you feeling?
Right.
What can we get better at? Can we have some one or two key points that we need to get better at, or we need to keep our foot down on top of. And if you can get a sneak peek at the video, especially overheads are gold in scrummaging terms, and you get in the Millennium Stadium, you get in Twickenham and stuff like that. So if you get those at half time, it shows a really, really good picture of what actually is happening in the scrum.
Yeah. Where does the second row come into all that, Paul? Would you just put your head down and push, do you, or were you doing analysis too?
Yeah, we definitely used to put our head down and push, and it wasn't that technical, but it got very technical towards the end of my time. I think Greg Feek was the first guy to really put a massive emphasis on the back five scrummaging. He was the first guy to ever come to training with a telescopic pole with a tiny little GoPro on the top of it, and he'd have a video analyst behind the scrum, videoing the scrum from on high in training. He was the first guy to ever do that. And if you can see the grass through any few little, gaps and joints, you know you have a problem. And I would have definitely been experiencing a bit of that, when a prop goes to hit a scrum and he leaves, and if you don't leave the station with him as a second row, there's a little cavity there for a split second, and the GoPro with the telescopic camera over training was the first time we ever really properly saw that. We'd been videoing training probably from both sides of the scrum for a long time, and Greg Feek used to be very, very calm in training. He was very different to a lot of the other coaches. We might only do 8 or 9 scrums in training, which is probably standard now, but back then it was a big deal. You could be over there hitting the machine for a half an hour in the earlier days, and then you go back in and look at the footage and you just correct what you'd seen. So I actually got moved across the scrum in 2009. I got moved from the tight head side to the loose head side because they wanted a bit more weight on the tight head side, and I kind of, after that, I started really kind of addressing how I scrummaged, because I was only ever about 112 kilos. I was never going to be, Simon Shaw's weight or Donegal O'Callaghan's kind of weight. So you had to try and be technically good in the second row, and I enjoyed that journey actually with Greg Feek, because it's the same then in the line out. You're relying heavily on props and their lift quality. You're relying hookers on their throwing quality. So you have to invest the same thing in the second row in terms of your scrummaging ability to make them look good.
I suspect, Paul, you've reflected on the Six Nations in depth and how you did yourself. Give us something you felt happy enough with, that you think, okay, I did a decent job there. I made a bit of an impact on that front. I know, don't give me faux humility here. And something that you thought, God, I need to get better at that. This coaching lark, Six Nations campaign, I'm going to need to improve that aspect of my performance. So give us one of each, maybe. What do you feel you did okay at?
Well, trying to stay out of the players' way is the important thing. Boys are at the front line all the time, every single week, whether they're playing derbies with their provinces or big European games. They're the guys that are at the front line and learning what is cutting edge, So we're actually, when we're watching footage all the time while we're out of camp, we're trying to keep up with them. So you're just trying to find out what they feel works best and trying to facilitate that, I suppose. And I tried to do that as much as I could, try and stay out of the smart guys' way and try and facilitate them to do what they're good at. It's probably different in a club where you have a mixture of, I suppose, playing abilities and playing levels. You've guys coming out of academies. You might even have a few academy players training with you to seasoned internationals. And you've guys that need to do a whole lot of work. You've guys that need to do less work and need to be looked after. But with Ireland, you're dealing with very smart, very motivated players, and you're just trying to facilitate them and not break them in training, I suppose, as well, is an important part.
And if there's one thing that you would like to improve on, if you felt, I could get better at that, this will be a longer answer, I guess, knowing you.
You'd like to get more done with less time, and that's one of the things I would have learned, even with Warren Gatland when we were on the Lions. I remember we had a meeting one day, and I'd sat down with Graham Roundtree, and we picked out 11 clips that we felt we needed to show around the line out, and he went up and he showed 3 of them, and afterwards I said to him, you left out a load of the detail. I said, how come you only showed 3 clips? He said, Gats just came up to me and asked me what I was showing beforehand, and he told him, look, you can show him 3 of them. That's all you're allowed to do. And Gats is big into making coaches prioritize, because the more time you're given, the more time you'll use. You know, every coach I speak to wants more time. But it really makes you prioritize what you're doing, and that's what I'd probably like to be better at what I'm doing with less time.
Yes, you probably wanted 111 clips, did you really, if you're being honest?
Yeah, well look, it doesn't land then, you know. I mean,
yes.
Again on the Lions tour, Sean Edwards, he'd get up and he'd present for 3.5 minutes, and it would be absolute box office.
Yeah.
You know, you'd 100% understand what he wanted you to do. He had a very simple plan, a few things that he felt were really, really important, and he left you in no doubt. And, you know, he didn't need 30 minutes of a meeting to do it. He could do it in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. He could do it with 2 clips. And they'd always be judging the players, judging, you know, where are they, you know, in terms of their motivation for what we're doing, or how tired are they, or did we travel yesterday? And he's good at that, Sean Edwards, and Warren Gatland is good at it as well. And I think that's why Gatland is suited to the Lions in many ways.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with